Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're going. I hope you're doing well. And we're going live with Tachyon Blue tonight. Just want to say, kind of before we get started, there were people who absolutely did help me when I first started and were very friendly, helped me out with their platform, et cetera, et cetera. I do like to offer that to other people in my very, very limited capacity. Mr. Tachyon has always been very polite and kind. And even though himself and Brianna Wu are on different ends of the GamerGate era, I want to make sure that. Good evening, Sultan Al Fahim. I hope you're doing well. I hope that even though they're on different sides, we can at least talk about it. And the interesting part to me, anyways, is how much it's affected our whole culture. I was literally jumping through Twitter today, and I see Daniel Penny. I see Daniel Penny, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and who is it? Last gentleman, JD Vance. They're hanging out at the Army Navy game in a skybox. And it's like, oh my God. Like we have the right-wing billionaire shit poster Elon Musk hanging out with the Subway Avenger, who obviously created a social media firestorm a couple of days ago. And then we have the, first and second most powerful person on the planet hanging out. And it's like, okay, well, obviously social media and all that kind of stuff affects everything. So, we should treat it with some level of gravitas, I suppose, which is funny because that means that the small world that we occupy ourselves in becomes increasingly relevant over the years. Also sharing some things that are very cool right now. I did post the secret level breakdown, the new Space Marine 2 animation from Blur Studios that went live on Amazon Prime. And my breakdown of that episode, despite cutting out 50% of the runtime, has almost 700 comments, 133,000 views, and 600 new subscribers. So we smashed 92,500 subs on the Warhammer channel. We smashed all our previous viewership records. So we're, Warhammer is cooking. That's what I'm saying. So, oh yeah, Brianna Wu says, what the F? Well, you can tell us what the F in a second. So looks like Mr. Tachyon is here. Hello, Jiki Mapab. So I'm gonna pull him in and we'll get cracking. So appreciate you. Let's go. All right, good evening.
Hey, what's up, Connor?
How are you? How you living?
Good. And yourself?
Oh, life's good. It's good to see your face. So, I think last time we might have, I don't remember your face. I think we might have been talking to a Discord logo. So I'm happy to connect. That's cool. But yeah, good evening. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight?
Yeah, I'm Tachyon Blue. I was involved with GamerGate. I ran the St. Louis meetups. I also ran panels at conventions to promote GamerGate and discussed it in 2019 to promote my book, GamerGate First Battle of the Culture War. Now I'm revisiting the topic nearly a decade on, just over a decade. And I spent the past year interviewing over 70 people involved with GamerGate on both sides. I've interviewed people who support the movement, people who are critical of it, journalists who covered it, feminist media critics, just a variety of people involved in a variety of capacities. And now I'm publishing their stories as part of a multi-volume series of books at gamergatebook.com or the People of GamerGate on Kickstarter.
So what I found so interesting last time we talked, it was, I don't want to say it was like difficult for me to connect, but I just remember maybe it's because I was kind of like a passive consumer of the story, right? I think I mentioned that I got into GamerGate via like Chris Raygun commentary and random YouTuber commentary and all that kind of stuff. But to me, we were talking about like ethics and journalism and the culture war and all that kind of stuff, and I think it's easy for people to hand wave it and dismiss it. But then I literally saw today Elon Musk, who bought, Twitter in order to fight a part of the culture war, hanging out with Donald Trump and JD Vance, the soon to be most powerful people on the planet, hanging out with Daniel Penny, who is the person from the New York subway who, was acquitted of manslaughter charges this past week. And I was just thinking to myself, it's like social media and the culture war have already been a story for the decade or for the past decade, and the people who have dismissed it have been steamrolled by it, basically. So that's where I think it's kind of interesting to go back to the roots, I guess.
Yeah, it is interesting too because we live in this world where everyone's on the internet now, and it
Mhm.
used to be people would say that politics aren't real life. I'm not sure if that's true anymore.
No, no, no. Like increasingly, I see social media commentators on mainstream news programs, right? So I saw, Pierce Morgan, he was the host of Good Morning Britain for like a decade. He was like a news commentator and a tabloid commentator for a decade before that. And then he started his own show, Uncensored, which was on a mainstream publication, and then it got moved to YouTube. But Pierce Morgan is, relatively speaking, like a household name in the fact that if you said that guy, people would be like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. Isn't he the news guy from England or something like that?" Right? And then I see Hassan Piker and like Hassan Piker and Destiny on on panels debating for a Pierce Morgan panel segment, and then I'm pretty sure I saw. It's the libertarian guy. I want to say it's Dave Smith. Dave Smith and Vosh were also on a mainstream news program the other day. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's like this world is clashing between the online political commentator and the mainstream political commentator. The worlds are meshing. But why don't you take us back a little bit to kind of your perspective? Like, I'm going to treat you as a subject matter expert, but I'm just going to inject what I think is necessary in order to give people context if they're unfamiliar, at least from my view. So can you kind of take us back to the roots, and I guess what I would assume 2015 and 2016 were like, because I think that would be kind of the beginning time frame approximately.
So yeah, well, GamerGate started a little bit before that. It was August 2014 for GamerGate. Though
Mm.
the culture war itself, like I don't know if you can put a date on when that started. So that's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Um, the culture war, I don't know if there is a culture war. Like obviously people have different disagreements, and like these disagreements about what culture should look like are going to change over time, and there's gonna be like different competing groups that have different interests.
Well, I
But
would
that's like
say.
always the case, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to kind of agree with you and then stretch it back. Like, if we want to go to the culture war, we could technically take it all the way back to the American Civil War, right? Or we could take it back to the Revolutionary War, where the British and the colonials didn't agree on anything. We could take it back to the Civil Rights era in the 1960s, where people were talking about desegregation and all that kind of stuff. And then what I would also say is drove a lot of online politics in the thousands and the tens, if we wanted to keep it to online culture war, would be Christian evangelical kind of like social commentary about like hip hop and music and culture in the 90s being so overbearing that atheists kind of had an internet counterculture that really sprung to life on YouTube. And then that also kind of feeding into, at least in my opinion, the anti-social justice warrior movement, because there was a shift, if I remember correctly, the 90s were kind of dominated by social conservatives and Christian conservatives wanting to dominate culture. And then what happened, I would say, in the tens is that authoritarian focus, I would almost say, shifted to progressives, which is what birthed this era.
Yeah, I don't think that that's too far off actually. And you mentioned the atheism community and the anti-SJW community that kind of came out of that to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually interesting too because they had their own sort of schism. Are you familiar with Atheism Plus?
Yes, New Atheism and Atheism Plus, 100%. This is kicking it back for me, and there might be the young guns in chat; they might not be able to appreciate it, but this is kicking it back to me to Thunderfoot, Armored Skeptic, Sam Harris. I'm trying to think of like the four horsemen of the atheist apocalypse or whatever, but there was this kind of like I would say almost like Boomer and Generation X split, and then kind of like you said, you said Atheism Plus. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was like the progressive split, like the progressive
Yes.
civil war.
Yeah.
In atheism.
Well, they tried to create their own organization, I think, right? They called it Atheism Plus, and like that was them, like the good atheist, right? They're the feminists.
Right.
They're also
No, Steve Shives, and if I remember, Kirsty Winters. I'm not sure how involved Kirsty Winters was, but I do remember Steve Shives getting name dropped a whole bunch of that during that time frame. And then also people are mentioning T.J. Kirk as well as a big figurehead in the atheism schism, where Atheism Plus or excuse me, you said, yeah, Atheism Plus was the progressive schism, and then they were kind of browbeating everyone else for being insufficiently dedicated to progressive values. When, let's face it, a lot of new atheists and atheists, they were shit posters, right? Like they came up in middle school and high school pissing off their parents, pissing off their teachers, pissing off everyone around them because they wouldn't just accept what was around them as the status quo. And so trying to get naturally transgressive atheists and anti-theists to sign up to a new heterodoxy was almost an impossible task.
Yeah, and a bunch of the more anti-atheism plus people, like the more traditional atheists, I guess, or whatever you want to call them, they ended
Yeah.
up getting involved with GamerGate too. Actually, like people like Kraut. Actually, do you know Kraut, the YouTuber?
Yeah, So are we talking about Kraut and T, the German fella
Yeah.
who? Okay, cool. Yeah, he and I, believe it or not, we actually exchanged DMs a couple of times. He's been trying to. I think he's a little bitter about the past like half decade or decade of online politics, but I think he's starting to put his toes back into the water, so to speak. So
Yeah,
he's figuring it out.
he says he wants to build a liberal community on YouTube. So
Well, I probably need to talk to him about that because I was thinking that a liberal libertarian coalition probably needs to form, considering where our modern politics are. But yeah, so if I was to summarize what we talked about for the past couple of minutes, like, so we have the new atheists and the atheist plus movement kind of, I would say, like, stirring the pot before we get the anti-SJW wave. And you mentioned that 2014 is actually the kickoff of Gamergate. So can you kind of set the scene and the inciting incident?
yeah, I'll be very brief because that's something I'm not very good at, as you know.
Well, hey, listen,
So,
if there's one thing that I get accused of, it's yapping. So you're amongst good company in that respect.
all right. So to start it off, there was a gentleman named Aaron Joni. He was dating a game developer named Zoe Quinn. The relationship didn't go so great. She ended up allegedly cheating on him with a game journalist named Nathan Grayson, who works for Kotaku. Kotaku promoted Quinn's game Depression Quest over 49 other games on this list for this article about new games that are coming out on Steam. He also reported on the Polaris Game Jam, this game jam that was unsuccessful, without disclosing his conflict of interest with Zoe Quinn, the subject of the articles. And this ended up becoming a big controversy, or more of like a minor controversy, I guess, really at the start. But Kotaku, their response was basically to say that there's nothing here, there's no there, that because Nathan Grayson didn't do a review of her game, that there's no conflict of interest in his view, and Stephen Totilo's view, the editor in chief. And so this continues to build sort of a powder keg. A bunch of other stuff happens during this sort of like 2-week period. Some people create a chat room called Burgers and Fries. It's this IRC chat room where people are talking about the situation. Other people, they're involved with this other game jam called the Finding Capitalists. It succeeds, but Zoe Quinn gets into a bunch of drama with them right as this is all happening, because she perceives them as being transphobic, which I don't think is accurate, but whatever. And then all of this sort of coalesces together into these articles that are called the Gamers Are Dead articles that come out. So several people in the games press, they feel as though they're under attack, and they decide to lash out with these Gamers Are Dead articles, these articles declaring into the gamer identity. This doesn't go so great for them, and so
I believe it.
enter
Which,
Gamergate.
by the way, if I can interject real quick. So Brianna popped into the chat and was like, "Hey, I want to jump on for a moment." I asked if she was going to play nice, and she said, I'll try." So are you okay?
Be mean if she wants.
Are you okay if I bring her on, if she wants to say hello real quick, and then we can kind of keep going with the lore after?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Let me send her the invite then. Yeah, and sorry. So what was the specific accusation, I guess, as far as like the malfeasance, right? Like what was the malfeasance between Zoe Quinn, the person that she had a relationship with, not an official relationship, but a physical relationship, and then kind of like the reporting? What was the issue?
Okay, so there were 2 articles. One of them was for Rock Paper Shotgun, this gaming site. So what they did was he wrote an article called the 50, basically listing the 50 new games on Steam. I can even link you this if you'd prefer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I trust you for the details,
Okay.
so you can.
All right, yeah. So basically, he wrote this article that promoted her game. over 49 others. So he has this list of 50 new games that have been approved on Steam Greenlight. 3 of these games on this list, he says, are standout games. One of them is the Depression Quest, and it's
Hmm.
he calls it a powerful twine darling. And he also uses screenshots from her game in the article. And the
Okay.
article's title, Depression, is called Admission Quest, sort of a play on the name Depression Quest. And he doesn't
So
this
he gave it favor that it might not necessarily would have warranted, I guess.
yeah.
So, or that's the
Or
accusation.
well, that or at least that he even if that was one of the top 3 best games out of that list, he probably should still disclose that he's
Disclose.
friends with the developer.
Okay. Well, Brianna's here, so I'm going to bring her in. So let's do that.
Hello, how are y'all doing?
Hey, good, you?
Did you put on your best behavior, shoes or something before you jumped in, or listen? All right, but
I can't
before we
promise
have
anything today.
okay, so before we have anything, I'm not a moderator. Tachyon was very polite and tactful to me.
Of course he
Uh,
was. He's trying to
and then-
rewrite history. He's going to be very polite. Of course he's going to.
Well, then
Well, we
there's
talked
an
about that.
accusation of rewriting history. I'm actually
So,
I'm going
I
to
just
sit
wanna pop
here
on and say
and
a
I'm
few
going to let you
things.
guys
I just
talk.
want to say a few things. I actually don't have anything to say to you, Tachyon, but I just want to say, because this is a show we do together, Connor, I
Mhm.
in no way endorse this Orwellian effort to rewrite the history of Gamergate. This is someone with zero credibility. I've gotten probably 5 emails about the weird behavior he's done to people from men, not women, reaching out to write this stuff. He's sitting here saying stuff that is the most glazed, inaccurate view of everything that happened in Gamergate. And I just wanted to say that out there. Like, if you're truly interested in this subject, the stuff this guy is saying is horseshit. So
Okay.
take it from there.
Then I have a question
Sure.
before you guys get into it. So I obviously was not personally involved.
Sure.
Got the information from a couple of YouTubers,
Mhm.
which was basically Chris Raygun, to be honest. Like,
Sure.
he's the person who was like, it's not about hate, it's not about harassment, it's not about stalking. Like, we have these serious concerns, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And so that's a kind of the vibe that I got from the
The
top.
difference between Dev and the reason I'm really good friends with Dev now is Dev acknowledges all that stuff happened. This guy doesn't. This guy is
Okay.
trying to rewrite history and pretend it's something it wasn't. It was a harassment campaign against women. It hurt me. It hurt my friends. It gave me a clinical sense of trauma, and just it's bullshit. So that's all I needed to say.
Tachyon, I guess and Brianna, if you want to stay, you can stay. If you don't want to stay,
I'm
you
not
can go.
particularly. I mean, your behavior is really bizarre, man. I cannot tell you how many people have written me talking about how weird you are in real life. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. Well, like, if you have specific claims she wants to bring up, she's welcome to come back and do that. If she's just going to come in here and say, "Oh, you're a weirdo because I've got anonymous people who emailed me supposedly," I don't think there's any real merit to that. She says I'm trying to rewrite history. I'm just trying to document what happened. I did reach out to Brianna to interview her and include her perspective as well. I have interviewed a lot of anti-Gamergate people. I think it's unfortunate that Brianna decided not to do that and decided to attack me instead of trying to tell her side of the story. And I'm open to hearing that out. I was open to hearing that out then. I'm still open to hearing that out now. I do think actually that Brianna has been dishonest about some things. Now, would I deny that harassment occurred? No, obviously not. I think that people on both sides did receive harassment that should be condemned. I don't support that at all. I've personally received some harassment as well. Yeah, I just, I don't think that her characterization of me or my project is very accurate. So that's all.
Well,
I'll say.
and I'll ask her too. So obviously, if she's quite passionate about this era and this time, and not speaking for her, but just kind of being descriptive, if she's supercharged, so I'll put it this way: when I'm supercharged and passionate about something, I get pissed and I start using profanity. That's typically what happens with me. And sometimes when there's content about something that I'm quite passionate about, I can't watch it because it'll just piss me off, right? But what I would say to Brianna or people who share her perspective is that we're kind of giving Tachyon, I guess, the floor to describe the events as he sees them and has interviewed them and has backed them up with his sources and all that kind of stuff. If there's a factual or narrative error, or you feel like there's facts that are being emphasized and facts that are being de-emphasized, I'm happy to hear those as well. So we're here kind of to listen to Tachyon's story. But if there's objections to that story, then we're happy to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Okay, cool. So getting back kind of into the narrative, what we were setting up. So in 2014, we have Zoe Quinn. Zoe Quinn writes this game. She has allegedly, according to her ex-boyfriend, a physical relationship with a games journalist. The games journalist lists it in the article and lists it high up and uses art and photos from the game in order to cite it as being high-end. And then, or not high-end, but worthy of interest and worthy of note and worth playing and all that kind of stuff. And you're not necessarily saying that the quality of the game was necessarily that bad that we should dog on it and say, oh, it didn't deserve to be on the list at all. However, if they were having a physical relationship and if they were friends, then that should have been disclosed as a part of the article. I think that's where we were at. Did I miss anything?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, then I'm ready to take it from there.
Okay, cool. So the games press, there's a reluctance to reform. A number of articles come out, 19 articles in total, most of them on August 28th, 2014. Some of them came out a few days later.
What was the title again? You said it, but I remember this.
Gamers Are Dead, but that's actually not the title of any specific article. They had a bunch of different titles. Like one of them was Gamers Are Over. Gamers Don't Have to Be Your Audience by Leigh Alexander. And that's for Gama Sutra, now GameDeveloper.com. And that's probably one of the more controversial articles. Hers and Devin Wilson's article.
Well, you don't have to pull them up. You can still give me the broad strokes. The reason
so
why that
TLDR. Oh, okay. So
well,
TLDR.
I was just going to. Well, actually, sorry. I'll just do editorialize a little bit. So all I was going to say is the reason why that would frustrate me, and I think the reason why people have been frustrated. I mean, we've talked about in the past like 6 months. Concord. Obviously that was a game that didn't seem to have like shooters. Are going to disproportionately favor men, males, masculine. However, there's of course girls who play, right? But, it didn't seem like that game was made for anybody, or it was made for any particular like demographic that was demanding that they have an Overwatch style shooter with like all these varied characters, right? It seemed to be trying to jam itself into an already packed market. Another thing that's actually happening today on Discourse, where I find myself more on the progressive side, is I don't know if you've seen, I think it's Ciri from The Witcher. I'm not like a huge like Witcher person, but they released the Witcher 4 trailer, which has a female protagonist, and she's a little bit tougher and more gruff than her prettier younger self. So people, including Dev, Short Fat Otaku, have defended the character design because it's not supposed to be a 19-year-old attractive gal. It's supposed to be like a 25-year-old or 30-year-old seasoned monster hunter character. And she still looks like a pretty gal. So
she's still attractive. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I saw that on Twitter too.
Yeah. So anyways, the gamer wars rage on a decade after they began. Let's put it that way. But anyways, I interrupted just to editorialize. So please continue.
Yeah. So Gamers Are Dead articles come out, really throws fuel on this fire. Gamergate sort of blows up into this massive online movement that's sort of dispersed across Twitter, Reddit, 8chan, 4chan at the time, and then later 8chan, and a bunch of online forums too, like Inant, Tech, Space Battles, RPG Codex. The entire internet's basically talking about this shit, basically, especially like in the gaming world. And so people at first, there's a lot of discussion about like what to do. And people decide ultimately to do email campaigns as like one of the primary strategies, to email the advertisers of these gaming sites that they perceive as being corrupt. And so they launched Operation Disrespectful Nod and a bunch of these other campaigns to try and contact the advertisers of these sites. Gawker, one of the sites that was targeted, later claimed that they lost 7 figures due to these email campaigns.
Email campaigns coming from which side?
Coming from the Gamergate supporters against the gaming sites that they perceive as being corrupt.
Wow. So hold on. So this was almost like an attempt at like cancel or boycott that actually did have some level of success, where the Gamergaters successfully petitioned the advertisers that were on these websites saying like, hey, they're writing all this BS and they're having all these inappropriate relationships. Can you please not support them?
Yep, and it was pretty successful. Actually, right now, Dan Saltman is doing something similar with Twitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and that also has had a pretty extreme effect. There are some, I can't confirm the details from Twitch's side. However, from the creator side, there are some creators who have reported like a 80 or 90% drop in revenue within the past 60 days on Twitch, specifically because of petitions from Dan Saltman and the people who supported his movement within DGG, Destiny's community, and they went after Twitch for Hassan Denims, and Frogan, basically saying some pretty wild stuff about the October 7th, 2023 attacks on Israel and some wild things that they've said since. And again, like Twitch is a $1 billion company, and they had to have taken multi-million-dollar hits as a result of this advertisement pullout. So that's actually interesting that we almost have a decade later a parallel.
yeah, absolutely. And then we also too we saw a number of other different strategies and approaches. So at first, they launched these things called operations. The GamerGate people did. I'm not going to get too lost in the weeds here. TLDR operations were things where people would propose something. It was a leaderless movement, so there's no like leader directing everything. But people would
Mhm.
propose something on Twitter or on Reddit or on various different communities, and then people would discuss it. And if there's a lot of buy-in for the idea, people would just sort of launch the projects on their own. So a lot of it's like a lot of like self-directed work and people working together in like small groups to try and bring about goals, but also bring other people into with hashtag campaigns like Operation Skynet was Op Skynet. You can look it up on Twitter now. There's a bunch of tweets on there. But like that was one of our
Mhm.
things where we tried to get everybody who's interested in talking about Gamergate to follow each other on Twitter.
Mm.
And one of the very successful operations that was launched too was called Not Your Shield. You may have heard of this actually, or
I haven't, but I did want to kind of not push back, but kind of say, I guess I think this is what Brianna would probably point to. We have this concept in social media called like targeted harassment campaigns or whatever, which is where like people get together, they organize, they make a plan, they go after people, et cetera, et cetera. And so I understand that you're saying that like this isn't directed, as in there isn't a single person who's saying like, hey, we're going to go do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. But you are saying like people did organize and they tried to organize intelligently around these things. So actually, you said that one of the most successful ones was getting all the people interested in Gamergate to follow each other. I could see how that would be wildly powerful because then you have a whole bunch of people with parallel interest all working together. And then you mentioned this Not Your Shield operation. What was Not Your Shield about?
so Not Your Shield was it's a hashtag Not Your Shield. It was used by a lot of women and minorities who supported Gamergate. Well,
Mm.
and also other people too who felt like their voice wasn't heard. It wasn't necessarily a strictly Gamergate only thing, but Gamergate were like the main people involved. And they
Well,
felt
and
like
was
they
that
were
because they were dismissing it as like a straight white male incel basement
yeah.
dwelling loser movement? Is that a
Well,
was that?
that's basically what was said. Yeah, a lot of weirdos like me in there. So we had to do Not Your Shield.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the women and minorities who support Gamergate made videos or tweeted out pictures of themselves holding up signs talking about like why they support Gamergate, why they think that games journalism needs to reform, why they oppose censorship, things like this. And
Mhm.
it was pretty successful. Actually, it changed the mind of at least one person, Man in Maroon, who I interviewed. He went in very skeptical of the Gamergate people, sort of like thinking like, well, I've heard they're harassers. Is that true? And then he saw this and decided to join up and found met new friends. So
Well, let me ask you. So you mentioned so we kind of know the ethical issue, which is somebody not disclosing a relationship in writing. We also know the corruption, which to me, I don't think we've discussed this yet. One of the things that's really frustrating for me is something that's developed within the gaming industry, which is the fact that journalism seems to trade access for positive reviews. That seems to be one of my most frustrating things, where it's like Call of Duty, Halo, all that kind of stuff. The first articles are going to be people who have been granted access to the game, but these are very large creators that the journalists want access to in the future, and so they kind of have to write like if it's a pile of shit, they have to find the one good thing about it and just write about that in order to kind of sweep for how bad the game sucks. Which is kind of why I would say games journalists don't get trusted a lot now, is because of this access issue. So is that the corruption that you're talking about, or was there a different problem?
well, there's multiple types of corruption. Like that is one type of corruption, and we did see that with Jeff Gerstmann at GameSpot. He actually got fired because he gave Kane and Lynch a poor review,
Mm.
and they were a major
Wait,
advertiser.
and Kane and Lynch was what like I don't want to say the AAA, but that was like the corporate backed like product that he had to shill for, and then he gave it a bad review, and then he
Yeah.
got canned.
Yeah, he refused to go along.
He was like, "Oh, this is garbage," and they were like, "Okay, well, you're not a part of this industry anymore." Wow, that's awesome. Jeez.
But there's multiple types of corruption too. Like I think one type of corruption would be like Jason Schreier and Ben Kuchera,
Mhm.
what they
Okay.
did with Greg Tito at The Escapist, where they actually pressured him to try and in this mailing group called Game Journal Pros, which was
Hmm.
this group of games journalists who were working in the industry for different publications, and talking with each other behind the scenes, which I don't think is necessarily bad to have like that kind of communication, but you got to be really careful with it. And they were trying to pressure one of the other members of the group, Greg Tito, to censor his forums because
Hmm.
they didn't like that they were talking about topics that they didn't want them to talk about. So like that's I think a type of corruption, right? And then like, but other
Well,
types of
that was going to
corruption,
be my next question. You said censorship. So what do you mean by censorship?
one of them would be like the behind the scenes stuff like that, where it's different games journalists talking to others in the industry and trying to pressure them in mailing groups and stuff like that to censor people. But also too like 4chan and some subreddits like R Gaming censored the
Mm.
GamerGate discussion at the beginning. And
Ooh, what r/gaming
r slash
on
gaming.
Reddit basically said, "Hey, we're not doing this."
So they did was they had it was being discussed there. It was allowed at first, but
Hmm.
there were thousands of posts in this massive thread, and I
Hmm.
think the thread was linking to a Total Biscuit, like Twitlonger or something like that at the time.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. That might not be true. It might be something else. But the thread was this massive thread, and they ended up blocking the thread and nuking it and deleting like thousands upon thousands of comments.
Well, and was their justification at the time, was it kind of like, oh, well, they're setting up for a brigade or they're setting up for harassment or these are people who are organizing to harass other people? Was that, even if you didn't feel like that's what was happening, was that what they were saying as justification for locking and deleting?
I'm actually not sure what they said. That's actually the R gaming stuff is not an area I've.
The only reason why I'm asking that is because on the chans, I kind of expect people to be able to shit post, I guess is the best way to say it. So
Mhm.
if 4chan locked it, I'm assuming they were probably locking it because they thought it was like annoying. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
they
that's
don't
what
seem to have.
I think. 4chan. Well, it's been speculated too that pe- people have speculated other reasons, but I think most likely
Mhm.
4chan. It was just the moderators were tired of dealing
Yeah,
with this
they
mess.
didn't want to keep trolling, or not trolling, but they didn't want to keep crawling through all those comments looking for whatever they needed to take care of.
Yeah.
So that's where the chans I would be less suspicious of. Whereas one of the things I actually saw a stat here, it was, and I'm not saying this is accurate. Of course, it's posted to Twitter. I don't know if it's accurate, but it was like political affiliation by a survey of different social media, and Reddit was like 60-40 liberal progressive to conservative. So it was one of the websites that kind of leaned more left wing than it did right wing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, oh, well, we don't want to be a part of a targeted harassment movement or whatever. Therefore, we're locking and nuking. So I'm not saying that's what they said. I'm just saying that would be my
Right.
suspicion.
Yeah, that's something that I don't know. Why
Mm.
specifically? I think it's been speculated that one of the moderators was talking with Zoe Quinn actually about this, and she requested they lock it.
Hmm.
But again, I would. That's not my area of expertise at the moment, so I would not.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Very
We can
hesitant.
keep it moving from a narrative perspective. So, all right, so we got this thing, we got the movement. People are organizing. They're on different websites. They're getting together. Some people are characterizing it one way. Other people are characterizing it another way. What's next?
All right, so at this point, everything all hell's broken loose. The Game Journal Pros thing is leaked out a few weeks after the Gamers Are Dead articles come out, revealing there's a lot of coordination in the industry. Operation Disrespectful Nod's underway. Basically, from here,
Can
it's
I ask? You said the list or whatever. And you also mentioned a mailing list. Is this what you were talking about, where everybody was on the same mailing list, so they effectively like had they were encouraged to be on the same beat, I guess?
yeah. So they were all part of this 150 games journalists, about roughly in total, were on
Hmm.
this mailing list called Game Journal Pros, and it's basically just in theory, it's like a professional mailing group where they just discuss the industry news, what they're doing. But sometimes they do other stuff too, like they talk about They talk about how they should send gift baskets to Zoe Quinn and censor the forums.
Okay. Well,
Or blacklist people too. Like they blacklisted a game developer and a game journalist. This is actually I can cite you this if you'd like.
well, and so would the objection from an external source be like, hey, you got, we get, so for instance, just as an example, if I go to, and this is something weird about YouTubing that I just want to share an insight on YouTube, it seems like commentary, YouTube as an example, they all talk about the same thing within like a week's period. As an example, I'm trying to think about it. I literally just watched the Queeman, Chud Logic, and Nick Diorio segments on, I think it's like Nick Doolittle or something like that, but it's basically just a creator who, he has a charity, he's pissed off that a bunch of people are not donating to him. He made a video that he was basically saying like, hey, if you guys don't donate, then I'm going to start naming names for all the rich people that I'm friends with who have collaborated with me in the past, but they ghosted me as soon as I started to try to get them involved in charity. And it was kind of like a lol cow situation. Now, from not defending it, just being descriptive, the reason why all those people, they probably are in Discords and messages and all that kind of stuff, but they also know that that's the topic of the week and then it's going to do well, right? So that I think is potentially the defense for the mailing list. However, I think from the outside, what you're saying is like, okay, well, you're not objective because you're
Well, I don't
rubbing
have an issue with the
elbows.
mailing list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. What I think
Okay.
was the issue was like their specific actions that they took as members of it. So I think that that's all totally fine. I think having those conversations in those groups is totally fine.
Okay.
But you have to be very careful that you're not colluding to push specific narratives. And I think you should
Okay.
also be careful too that you don't do things that would be unethical, because this is a private group with other people in the industry, like trying to pressure people not to work with other people anymore, which is something that happened in the group. I think that like, stuff like that is unethical. As for your earlier point about like the commentary people, they all cover the same topics. Could that have been what happened with the Gamers Are Dead stuff? Maybe. Some people think that that's likely, but
Well, I still hate it because it's a dog shit opinion.
yeah, true. I do too.
So,
But
regardless of whether or not you were on a mailing list that was coordinated to say, oh, we don't have to cater to the gamer bro demographic anymore, or if you just saw that article come out on Monday and you're like, hey, that's spicy, I could capitalize on the rage from this thing, I'm going to write a parallel article that basically says, screw the white straight male basement dwelling losers who play video games. We shouldn't even cater to them at all anymore. I'm going to write that article. Well, if you get blowback on that article, I can understand why, and I think it's because you stepped on a rake because you wanted the attention. Well, you got the attention. So sorry. Anyways, yeah. So you're telling me about a different operation that I think was going to be underway at that point.
Well, basically at this point, there's a whole bunch of operations. Like if you look at the list, like there's a list of different operations on like the Deep Freeze wiki, and it's like dozens upon dozens upon dozens of them. Some of them got more support than others. Some of them were just ideas that someone threw out there and never really went anywhere, right?
Okay.
As is always going to be the case with any sort of movement. But basically from August 2014, the end of August 2014, over the next several years, this sort of group of people online, and more people are being added to this group all the time. Like I came in spring 2015, for instance. They would organize events and conferences. Like I hosted panels at 2 different conventions, Arch Anime and NatsuCon in St. Louis. We also worked with the Society of Professional Journalists to host the Airplay event, which was this conference where a game developer and 2 journalism experts met with GamerGate supporters at a convention center, and they were basically discussing the issues that GamerGate had, both with the way that the media would cover GamerGate and also with the specific issues that they had in games journalism. And they actually agreed on 2 of the 3 ethical questions. The journalism panel, their expert panel, actually agreed with GamerGate people that they had ethical issues. The third one, they couldn't really agree. They thought it was too complicated to really determine one way or the other. And they also did a bunch of other, yeah.
Well, no, so we have this movement, and then this actually. Sorry, I don't want to lead you where I think we're going, but so you continue.
Yeah, so we do the conference. That's actually a year later. That's in August of 2015. And we do a bunch of other stuff too. We'd make songs and memes and do other operations, email campaigns. Like there was one against Univision, for instance, because Univision attacked Nikki Moxie, a Gamergate supporter who was married to Palmer Luckey, and they were going after her because she supports Gamergate and because they don't like him, who's a CEO, a tech CEO, and a bunch of other stuff too. Like we did, Operation Don't Comic Con is one that I launched to encourage this boycott of Comic Con in Spain that had censored Cucurullo. He's a famous artist who supports Gamergate. They banned this debate that he was supposed to be part of there.
Okay, let me ask an important question for commentary. Right. Is Cucurullo a lolicon?
No, I don't. I don't think he draws lolly stuff.
Okay, just checking.
I don't know all of his work, but I got.
Yeah, because they're like seriously like 40% of the drama and commentary. I swear to God, it has to do with lolicon and people either drawing it, supporting it, sweeping for it, whatever. That's literally like, I swear to God, like within the past week, I was like, dude, I need to hear something else besides this person either liked or created lolly and then they got supported by somebody else. Like I just need to hear something else. And yeah, so anyway, so I just want to ask that kind of as a joke. But all right, so we're in the, it's been a decade. So is the book that you're writing, is it specifically from that era, kind of like 2014, I guess, to the 2016 era, I guess, which would be like the election of Trump, which I would almost see, maybe you don't see it this way, but I kind of see that like anti-progressive shitposty online energy, maybe not responsible for Trump winning, but definitely being like a part of the momentum behind him. Like there was a healthy chunk of young men who were of voting age around that time who were saying like, progressives and liberals are going too far. They're way too comfortable with their like cultural authority. They're basically telling us that we can't do anything without offending them. As a result, like Trump might be, some people like Trump, but some people would say, oh yeah, I think Trump's like actually a dirtbag, but I want to throw a grenade at these people. Therefore I'm voting for Trump. And so that's kind of where I would see like the natural climax and almost culmination of this event. But would you say that Gamergate stretches past that era, or you see a different climax?
Yeah, so I would. There's a lot of thoughts. I took a few notes slightly. So I would say that Gamergate went from about 2014 to about 2018. I was involved at the time, and I felt like 2018 was about when everyone kind of gave up, or sort of like went their own directions with it. Also, too, I think that 2018 is a good closing point objectively, because that's when the last of the meetups happened, or at least the publicly advertised meetups. You had St. Louis, which I organized, and you had the San Francisco meetups, which were organized by Nicole Sund, and then later Devil's Advocate. So that's when the last of the meetups were. That's also when I think personally I felt like basically everyone had kind of agreed to go their separate ways. There's never like an official endpoint to Gamergate. There's no like official leadership, but I think that that's like probably a good place to put it. 2018. As for the momentum behind Trump, I mean, I think Trump used memes for sure, and I think that the woke stuff hurts Democrats in elections, most likely. I don't have like data on this, but I do think that the people who are woke, like if you look at like the Hidden Tribe study, for instance, it's like 5 to 8% of the population or something like that. It's not a huge percentage of the population, and a lot of other people are bothered by this group. But I don't think that the Gamergate people really went for Trump. I see.
Why do you say that?
Two reasons. One, there is the Chris Ferguson and Brad Glasgow survey in December 2015, January 2016. So this was before the 2016 election, but the same year. He surveyed 700 Gamergate people, over 700. And he had a pretty good methodology with this study too. He had to verify that everybody who took the survey had supported Gamergate prior to the announcement of the survey. I'll link this here too for you right now. And he found that the Gamergate people were actually in December 2015, January 2016 at least, that they were actually more liberal than the median American, compared with Pew Research on every issue except for affirmative action. On affirmative action, they were more conservative.
So they were kind of like, I would say that gamers kind of do lend that way, and that's because I would say gaming, you're going to have black friends, you're going to have Hispanic friends. The only thing that you care about is whether or not you're playing video games. You're going to have gay friends. You might even have trans friends. And the only thing that you're going to care about is whether or not you guys like the same games, talk shit about the same games, have fun playing games, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not surprising to me. But I also think that it might lend a little bit more libertarian because it is a little bit more like nerdy, right? So it might be a little bit more not trying to make the GamerGaters feel too good about themselves, but a little bit more intellectual, right? You know, nerds like to play video games and all that kind of stuff. And so as a result, they probably would want I guess like a fair playing field, I guess you would say, when it comes to employment and all that kind of jazz. So, yeah, so you kind of, sorry, I was typing messages while we were talking as well, but what do you, you, sorry, 1 second.
I will briefly add too that my own research. I've asked people a ton of political questions. Not in the interviews
Yeah.
themselves as much; those are less political. But in the optional survey that I've sent to everybody, everybody except for the 2 third-party trolls and some of the later people. But
Yeah.
27 of the GamerGate pro GamerGate people who supported the movement, 27 of them have taken my optional survey. And of the Americans, which I think was 22 people who answered this question, 33% of them were going for Trump in 2024, and 27% were going for Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
Oh,
rest
so
were
it was
either,
literally split almost evenly, third.
yeah, but there was a sizable group that was third party too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was about a third, yes.
Okay. And then Brianna's typing. She might give me some questions or some points or something like that. But
Yeah, she's welcome to come back on if you want. I'm happy to take all comers always.
well, yeah, and maybe we'll do that in a second. Not Brianna specifically, but you know, you mentioned that you might be willing to, if somebody in chat had an issue with what you said, then maybe you'd be willing to talk to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm just going to summarize it from my perspective, I guess. So Brianna, let's just put it this way, is not a fan of Mr. Tachyon here. That's what I'm getting from the DMs. And her characterization of what you've said is that it's very sweeping for the optics of the GamerGate folks. Now, for me, this is kind of my perspective on what's been said so far, is if I was to summarize what you said so far, it's the Zoe Quinn incident happens. Here are the valid objections and criticisms from the GamerGaters. The GamerGaters organize in, actually, I would say, like a way that has been more, I would say, more common as time has gone on, where people online are able to like form like little tribes and go on like missions and all that kind of stuff. They do that. And you could either see that as nefarious, or you could see that as interesting, because it's effectively the democratization of social media that mobilized an audience or a mass to do something. And then I think that the chief objection is that Brianna, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, she's not here, but she saw that as used towards nefarious ends of like harassing people. And but you're saying that it was used as an accountability tool for game journos. So that would be my guess on the schism.
I'll be a little spicy here. I'll say that I think it's kind of cowardly here of Brianna. I wish her argument was that. I wish her argument was that the GamerGate people, that we were engaged in a huge amount of things, a lot of different decentralized aspects of it because of the leaderless nature. And I think that some of the elements or some of the actors went too far, or that they targeted me personally in ways that were unethical. If she wants to make that argument, I think that's totally fine. But like, that's not been her argument. Her argument is that the entirety of GamerGate is an online misogynistic harassment campaign. And
so I think the emotions might be clouding it then, because then you guys might be saying the same things but then hearing it differently, I guess. Because I've heard her say like, oh well, there were some valid parts, or this, that, the other, but that could have been that also could have been in reference to a different thing. So I've seen her be more conciliatory, or more maybe not towards GamerGate, but towards other things that were kind of like extreme at the time, right? And so for me, I guess my thing is, the way that I view it is that there is actually, who is it? Ben Shapiro said this almost at this exact same time. He was talking about the alt-right, okay? And what he said was that there is a core of the alt-right that is white nationalist or ethno-supremacist, right? And he's talking about Richard Spencer specifically and the people who followed Richard Spencer. But what he said was, there are fellow travelers who are not white supremacists, who are not white nationalist, but they identify as alt-right because they're like shit posty. They want to throw wrenches. They're trolls. They're this, they're that. And so they create this like ballooning political effect where the hardcore evil people or the hardcore people with like bad ideas, they're actually a pretty small core of the alt-right. And then the people who participate in the broader movement are, actually wildly different across a whole spectrum of things. And the Proud Boys, the Libertarians, all those kinds of groups who showed up to unite the right, I would consider that the bigger group, right? So when it comes to Gamergate, my estimation is that there was probably a core of people who had quote unquote like valid concerns, but then there's also going to be a core, I would almost say like a core of people who they're like, fuck these people. They're making our culture and our society worse. I'm going to go after them any way I can in order to attack the shit out of them. Now that might be a very small subset, but that subset still exists.
Yeah, I think that some people, like I think Ethan Ralph, for instance, I think that he did engage in harassment during Gamergate, including against Brianna Wu. So like her.
Well, and Ethan Ralph's a massive fucking piece of shit no matter what he's doing.
Yeah.
So like, like I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, I think it is pretty crazy for her to come in here and snipe at me and not even be willing to even say what I get wrong. What did I get a single thing wrong so far? Like objectively, like what did I objectively get wrong? Factual wise, I'm open to
I will ask her, and I'll DM her and I'll basically say like, hey, you did enjoy that I had Mr. Tachyon on. You didn't like what he was saying. Can you please give me your characterization of the events? But I'm not going to summarize again. But if we're at 2014 to 2016, we're now talking about the election of Trump. And I might have asked this question before, and to be honest, I might have gotten distracted by typing. What was the climax for you? So what did this lead to? What was the result?
For me personally, or for the movement?
For the movement.
Well, the result.
Well, and also if you were a part of it and it climaxed for you individually, I wouldn't mind hearing about that either.
Sure. So I'll do. So in terms of the movement itself, I'd say that it was effective in terms of it cost Gawker 7 figures, so it cost them money. Not necessarily the biggest goal of all time, but I think it also it created conversations about this with conferences like the Society of Professional Journalists Airplay Conference. We had a South by Southwest conference panel called Save Point. I think also too, maybe it had some role with the FTC changing their disclosure rules for journalists in online media, where you have to disclose if you take money, for instance, to promote a product, sponsorships, things like that. Gamergate was promoting that with Operation UV and submitting in a lot of public comment. People were to try and get the FTC to change the regulations on that. So like that's a success. I think also too that games journalism has gotten a little bit better in terms of disclosure. Maybe some of that's the FTC, but I think some of it too is just it's a bad look to because I think that they were really, really, really careless with how they talked about their personal relationships before Gamergate. And either the relationships have gotten better or they've gotten better at how they talk about them. One of the two.
Well, one of the interesting things too is that there's been articles about how much of the games journalist organizations that were kind of big a decade ago, how many of them have like either shut down or downsized or whatever. Like I think somebody was kind of joking about it because they were like a villain from this era, but they were like 90% of the people who were working in this industry a decade ago are gone. They're not a part of the industry anymore. And so I do see that as a change into the time. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting though is that like media has also changed substantively too. We don't really go to, or at least I don't really go to PC Gamer, right, for game reviews. I don't go to Kotaku. I don't go to a news journalism website to read about the most recent games. I jump on YouTube, I type in the game, and then I look for reviews. And if there's like a few nerdy multi-100,000 sub YouTubers who seem to know what they're talking about, who say that it's good, then generally speaking, I'll trust them to do it. And they'll also they will show gameplay and mechanics for why the game is good. Right. And then if it's getting panned, then I'll kind of ask, like, why is it getting panned, and is it something that I would be willing to look past just to enjoy the game, right? And so that's kind of how I do it. So I think our the way that we consume games news might be different compared to a decade ago as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one. I'm glad you brought that up because that's the democratization sort of games journalism.
Mhm.
Where I think that's one thing that's great about games journalism is that there's greater diversity now than there was a decade ago. Now, obviously, you did have YouTubers and streamers a decade
In
ago,
thought,
but it's
right?
blown up. Yeah,
Yeah.
and now you can go to the games journals that you trust, where people have similar tastes to you, and so that
Mhm.
way you're getting a much, and you also see the gameplay footage too. Like what you said, you see the mechanics yourself. I think that that's
Mhm.
really good at helping consumers find content creators and finding games essentially that they want or are interested in. I also want to talk about too the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is that there were a lot of people involved with Gamergate who wanted to bring in other aspects to it.
Mhm.
So everyone more or less agrees, except for Kraut, that Gamergate was about ethics and games journalism as a movement. Um, but a lot of people want to add other stuff to it as well.
So hold on, what
So
did Kraut say?
well, Kraut was just a culture warrior. He just well
Yeah.
his view was that the social justice left basically had
Uh,
become authoritarian at the time, and
mhm.
he thought it was important that he speak out against it.
Okay. So he got, sorry, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or anything, but he felt like he was a warrior in that war, ready to fight for that cause, which was progressives has gone too far. Screw him. We're going to throw a monkey wrench at him.
Yeah, absolutely. He was 100% that camp. He even admits it too in the interview. He says,
Based. So, anyways, sorry, I'm joking, but continue. Sorry.
so here, I can just pull up the gamergatebook.com, the link. So that goes to the Kickstarter page, gamergatebook.com. On there, I have a small little breakdown of the other things people say Gamergate is about.
Mm.
And this is continuing to grow and develop as I input more data. But
Are these
41,
critics or gamergaters or both?
this is just supporters. This is just Gamergaters. So
Okay.
so this is from 12 of the interviews that I've input data from directly.
Mm.
41.7% of the people of those 12 say that Gamergate was about artistic freedom and about opposing censorship. There was
Okay.
also a camp of people too that believed it was about opposing social justice warriors, but I don't have data yet really because most those interviews like Kraut's those came later on, and
Hmm.
so I don't have data on how large those groups are yet, but I think it's far smaller than the censorship and artistic freedom group.
Well, let me ask that, and let me read a super chat real quick. So, Vokes for $10. As a GG vet, I can say there was and still is a subset of grifters who jump in and join in on the discourse because lefty bashing was on the menu. And yeah, so dude, I think about that. Just admitting my thing, I think about that all the time. There are so many people who literally just wake up and they look for a reason to be upset by like progressive cultural stuff, and then they get upset and they post a 10-minute video and they get a few 100,000 views. And they've been doing it for a decade. I don't know how their audiences aren't exhausted of it by now. But you mentioned something, artistic freedom. What freedom was the progressive authoritarians and or the journalism industry and or the giga corporate knuckleheads? What were they threatening?
Okay, that's a good question. So this took two main forms, I guess, or I guess three main forms. One of which is localization.
Hmm.
So you know how games are brought over from Japan or from other countries, and they have a localization team that does the translation for it, and they also sometimes make changes too, right?
Yes.
So a lot of gamers were disappointed that Japanese games were being changed in some cases. Like one of them was Fire Emblem Fates or Tokyo Mirage Sessions. These were two big games that were censored at the time. In Fire Emblem Fates, they changed a lot of the dialogue. They also they literally just like changed it in weird ways too. Like they changed a bunch of the dialogue too. Like they added in this whole scene where they talk about pickles for no reason,
Hmm.
and that wasn't in the original. And then two, they also would take out different gameplay elements in some cases too. Like they took out a mini game from Fire Emblem Fates.
Uh-huh.
That would allow you to
Was any
pet
of it involving
people.
sex with minors?
No, it involved petting your characters though, your face. Because it was
Okay.
like DS game.
And
But
again, I'm being an asshole, but like the only reason why I'm asking is because it does seem like it seems adjacent. Like I start hearing Japan, I start hearing video games, and I'm just like, oh, What did they censor, right? Because and again, I'm joking, but this was an era, and I'm not trying to indict anybody, but people point to in commentary that they point to who is it, Shadman, as a lolicon artist who was defended at the time under the auspices of freedom of speech. They also talk about Chris Tyson, who is Mr. Beast's former best friend and co-host, who was trans, who kind of swept for Shadman and also posted their art and also posted how much they enjoyed it and this, that, the other. So there was a, I don't want to say like nefarious, but there was almost like a giga libertarian perspective on art where it's like, don't tell us anything about anything, right? Like you can't criticize. Well, I guess you can criticize it, but don't censor any of it, right?
Well, I think the
So,
GamerGate people, the people in GamerGate who thought it was about opposing censorship, would be more of that giga libertarian camp, probably.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. And if we were talking to 2016 versions of these folks, they might say some pretty wild stuff. But sorry, you were saying.
So what they did in regards to this was a few different things. One of which was Operation Torrential Downpour. I was a big proponent of this idea because I was in the artistic freedom camp. And so what we did was we wrote a bunch of letters to Japanese companies, and we told them, and emails, things like that, and we told them that we don't like censorship, and we encourage people to talk about it on Twitter, on social media, on like the hashtag torrential downpour, make videos, every way out there, every way you could possibly get the message out there. Talk about censorship, talk about how we're opposed to censorship and localization. I think that that was successful too. They also had like the Million Gamer petition, which I don't think actually got 1 million signatures at all. But they like stuff like this to try and convince companies not to censor products when they localize them. Well, I think that that was somewhat successful. I don't think that that's as big of a problem as it is now, or as it was then. But I difficult to say.
Well, the reason why I was asking all this kind of stuff and kind of the reason why I'm thinking about it is this was, I don't want to say it was the first time, but it's the first time that I can think of that almost like a tribe was formed around an issue and fought aggressively for that issue. And what I mean by that is it seems to me anyways, in the late thousands and the early tens, I think I was still on like MySpace in the thousands, and then I came over to Facebook, right? And Facebook was kind of more not centralized. It was a more localized social media space. You had basically your actual friends and family, and you had actual people in your community who were friends of friends, and you added each other, and you posted your pictures of your vacation and this, that, the other, and that was kind of the social media experience. What happened to me in the middle tens was there was Facebook social media groups that actually formed around ideas like Jordan Peterson or like Sam Harris or this or that, like random weird culture war flashpoints. But everybody in that group was talking about that one thing, right? And then eventually I came over to Twitter, and this is actually probably after Gamergate. But what happened was Twitter is just the whole world. You can get into a fight with somebody from like Brazil or the Philippines or whatever. As long as they speak English, you can get into a fight with them over an issue. But what's interesting to me about Gamergate was it was the first time that I can think of where tens of thousands of people banded together to fight for one issue at one time. And I'm actually trying to think of like what's happened since then is I think that instead of banding around an issue, they've banded around personalities. And so now you have people who are like, they're DGG, they're Destiny fans, they're VGG, they're Vosh fans, they're Hassan fans, they're this, they're that. And so they're more circling a charismatic personality than they are a central issue. So it might actually be, I don't want to say like a unique, but it might actually be like a lightning in a bottle almost. Like it might not be able to be replicated in the future.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because it is weird that we've never seen anything like Gamergate, I think, again.
Yeah.
Maybe it is because of that moment in time where it was like social media was just starting to blow up, and then you had all of these people online who come from different backgrounds on Twitter and also other social media sites too, and they have very drastically different cultural like subcultures that they're part of, but they're all kind of mixing together and crashing. But I don't. this is all spurious, feel good stuff. I don't have like data on like.
No,
Yeah.
neither do I. But my guess, though, this is my guess, this is going to be my internal narrative until somebody corrects me on it, is the fact that at that time, when I think of the creators, Chris Raygun would not be, no offense to him, wouldn't be somebody that I would like follow into battle. Armored skeptic or shoe on head or whatever. They were entertaining figures, but to me, in my personal opinion, they were nerds with web cameras, right? They talked about interesting things. They talked about cool things. It was fun to be a fan of them. It was fun to like leave a comment or like the video or whatever. But I'm not like, following them into battle. Whereas I feel like Destiny, Vosh, and Hassan, I don't follow them as aggressively as their fans do. But their fans kind of feel like that, right? They're like, well, oh, I will die on my sword for Hassan Piker, right? Like it seems like people are like that. And so I wonder if the energy that would normally be getting stuck around a movement is hard, right? You get stuck on a movement, you have to fight for it, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to follow up with your teammates and your peers and all that kind of stuff. That's a pain in the ass. Showing up to a streamer's video and just being like, yeah, based, you said exactly what I was thinking. That's a lot easier. So I'm wondering if like streamers in a way sucked out the energy that would have been around social movements and if they built it into cults of personality.
No, that is interesting. I don't know. That is well. I'd like to see the world where things went the other way and social movements.
Yeah, where
people
kept fighting for social movements. No, I agree. I think it would be interesting if you had, let's say you had a GamerGate about immigration reform, or let's say you had a GamerGate about money out of politics, like Occupy Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you had a GamerGate movement. I'm trying to think of like another thing that's really like gun rights or something like that. But very often those movements are kind of like stale and corporate and they're run by organizations almost, whereas the cults of personality seem to be where a lot of momentum and energy is. Now, before we continue, I do want to read this thing because I wanted to address it. Svalin says, what does Connor think about the drone crisis? So I'm not making a call on anything until it's out. All right. I saw the video from the local news channel that was basically like a giant ball of electricity. And I was like, oh my God, it's actually UFO anti-gravitics. The 1950s and 1960s conspiracy theorists were right that we now have like propulsion that is anti-gravity. I literally read some articles on like anti-gravity technology. And then somebody said like, no, this is an airplane. You can see the three things blinking and it's just because of the camera lens at a weird angle. And I was like, damn it. So I thought for a second that the US military had effectively flying saucers. So I'm not going to make a call until it's done. Right. Until we know, no, I'm not going to make a call. And sorry. So, so that's really the only comment. Sorry,
I want to ask you about GamerGates for other movements. That's I wonder. I mean, there's a lot people could probably learn. Now, the exact specific tactics might change over time, but I wonder if that's like a world we would want to live in, where you would have like all these different, perhaps hundreds of different online social movements, all on doing their own thing. All like this is the immigration group, this is the anti-immigration group, this is the.
It would be a pain in the ass. And the reason why it would be a pain in the ass is because effectively what you would have is, I know Brianna and you are characterizing it differently, but you or the advocates for the movement, they would view themselves as social instigators in a just cause, right? Every single movement would see themselves that way. Then the people who are receiving the pressure, let's just face it, they would see them as a harassment group who was going out of their way to make their life hell. I'm pretty sure even if we had these like public advocacy groups and public social pressure campaigns, that's how they would be perceived by the people they were targeting, right? So,
but they shouldn't though, right? If it's just free speech, if there's people are sending threats and things like that, then obviously that should be condemned. But if it's just people advocating you change your policies or implement ethics policies or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you as a creator, okay. So let me use a personal example. I had a conversation with a gal named Lavlin, okay, and she is not a fan of the gentleman Mr. Destiny, okay, and we were talking about feminism, we were talking about philosophy, we were talking about like the role of women and men in modern society and how do we improve it and all that kind of stuff. And then she said some wild shit. she said like, "Oh, Destiny just uses his platform in order to manipulate women to sleep with them or something like that." And leaving that 90-minute to 2-hour conversation up, I got the same comment like 60 times in a row, which was basically like, why didn't you challenge her on this point? Why didn't you challenge her on this point? Why didn't you challenge her on this point? And of course, like, yeah, sure, it's your free speech. But after like the 20th fucking comment, yo, fuck that shit, right? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and listen to you fucking make the same comment 2,000 times. If you scroll down the comment section, you can see that somebody else already made the comment. You're just here to be a dick. So I took it down. I made a 10-minute video basically explaining my perspective, whatever. Everybody moved on. Nobody gave a shit. But the point is that like, it's not harassment definitionally, in that somebody is like stalking you, or I think Brianna actually said throwing bricks through your window or something like that. Like if that happens, that's obviously like stalking, harassment, etc. It's not in that case. But if you get the same message 10,000 times about an issue, those people could be correct, but it definitely feels like harassment. I'll put it that way.
No, I mean, I could definitely see that as a content creator. Put something out there, you get
Well,
tons
or
of
a public
comments
figure,
or Twitters or tweets. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think you can get
but a public figure, it
bombarded
might
with
be your
social.
job,
Yeah, if you're on
right? If
social
you're
media. No,
well, not just if you're on
you don't
social media,
disagree.
but think about like the DOT guy. I think it's Pete Buttigieg right now. Let's say there's that Ohio train incident where they spilled a bunch of chemicals. If he gets 10,000 emails all saying like, "Hey, motherfucker, what are you doing about the spilled chemicals in Ohio?" That is his job to receive those messages. And if they're not threatening him personally or threatening his family, then it is his job to process those messages and create public policy, basically.
Yeah, but if you're not a government official, you're going to be like whether you're a game developer, right, or a games journalist, or
Mhm.
you're a YouTuber or podcaster or whatever, you're going to get online hate sometimes, unfortunately. And yeah, just you have to find some way to deal with that. That's productive. And I would say
Well,
that
my
report them, report the post if they're like violating the law, right? If they're threatening to kill you, report them to the authorities, of course. And if
Mhm.
it's just like you suck, it sucks, I guess. If you don't like it, block the person. Ban the comment,
well,
ban them
that's what
from
I do.
leaving comments or whatever. But
If it's a few dickheads or whatever, I just block and move on. If it's somebody who's saying like really wild shit, I screenshot it, I report it, I block, and I move on.
no,
And then,
oh, sorry, please.
no, I was just gonna say, I just don't think I've caught the volume that some of these people have caught. Right? Some of these people, like I've gotten dozens of messages. I've never caught hundreds or thousands. Right?
And I would say this: if you got a major incident, and maybe you'll back me up with this as a former law enforcement, Connor.
Mm,
But if you do have like some sort of major harassment incident, like what I would do is document what happened as close to contemporaneously as possible, and
mhm.
also tell other people about it as well.
Sure,
At least privately.
100%.
It doesn't go public, but you can. Yeah.
No, I'm 100% with you there. Document. And I don't want to take us too far off course, but at the end of the day, if somebody is making death threats, if somebody is sending you wild messages about they're going to kill you, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, law enforcement is. I said this the other night during a different conversation. When seconds count, law enforcement is minutes away, right? So basically what I'm saying is like you can't rely on law enforcement to save you from a situation that's unfolding in moments,
Mhm.
right? So I sympathize with people who might not be rich enough to afford a Doberman Pinscher or a Rottweiler and an alarm system and a gun and know how to use it, right? Like I sympathize with those people, but also I would say if you're going to be a public figure, you should probably have a Rottweiler and an alarm system and a gun, and you should know how to use all three. So that's my personal advice. Okay, yeah. So where are we at now? Because I feel like I have a pretty good overview. What other things do you think the audience should know? I guess.
Well, I guess we can go so many different directions. Do you want to talk about like the media coverage of Gamergate or?
Sure. And then just to keep it palatable, I do want to keep this around like the 90-minute to 2-hour mark.
Yeah, no,
So
for
I
sure.
would say we got 20 minutes to 45 minutes left. So if we can kind of keep it, not all over the place, but if you can
Yeah.
kind of keep it like we're going to hit this topic, here's the overview, we're going to hit this topic, here's the overview, then I'm good with that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's do media coverage of the
All
event.
right. So I wonder do you think it'd be worth taking just a moment to game out how we want to approach
Sure.
different aspects of it.
Give me your top 3 of the things that you think you would want to cover, and
So
I'll
we
tell
could,
you what I think is
all right,
good.
all right, media coverage of Gamergate,
Uh-huh.
harassment. I think having like a deeper dive into that, and
Yep.
then for the third one, we could do. Well, what do you want to talk about for the third one?
Well, honestly, I think those are the 2 that we should hit.
Okay.
So the media coverage, I'm personally interested in, and then the harassment. I know that probably this upcoming Wednesday, I am going to have Brianna and I will cover whatever the topics of the day are, but we probably will spend 10 or 20 minutes just talking about this. Where if she had beefs with your characterization of events, or if she had a bone to pick with you, or if she had a bone to pick with Gamergate in general, then I've already heard your side. I want to hear hers, right?
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So I kind of want to hear your vibes on harassment, because if I'm not saying you're going to say this, but if you were like, oh, there was no harassment, Brianna Wu was making it all up, she's a dumb witch, right?
No.
Then I would be like, oh, okay, Brianna might have a point here. But if you're like, hey, here's all the documented levels of harassment, but here's how many people were participating in the movement, and this is what they achieved that was positive or whatever, then we would have a more nuanced conversation, right? But let's do media first.
Okay. So I believe that the media covered Gamergate for the most part pretty poorly. There were some people who did cover it pretty well, like Eric Kane of Forbes or Kathy Young of Reason Magazine, some other people as well. But I think that unfortunately, there is a sort of narrative out there, the Wikipedia version of events, that sort of portrays Gamergate, much like Brianna, I think would be more sympathetic with this idea that Gamergate's sort of this harassment campaign that was. Let's just read the Wikipedia article real quick.
Sure.
The very start of it, of course, because it's very. It's not really long,
I'm sure it's
actually,
like 40 pages.
Yeah. All right, so the opening, it says Gamergate was a loosely organized misogynistic online harassment campaign and a right-wing backlash against feminism, diversity, and progressivism in video game culture.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't think that that's accurate. I don't think that it was I don't think that the majority of the people involved were motivated by misogyny. I don't think it was right-wing. I think it was politically diverse. I don't think it was a harassment campaign. I don't think it was opposed to diversity. And if it was opposed to progressivism and feminism and gaming culture, like that one, I guess you could maybe give it.
Mm-hmm.
That one, I think you can maybe make a case for at least like certain types of progressivism and feminism. Like a lot of the people involved, some of them were involved, I guess I should say, were progressive and feminists, but they disagreed with they disagreed with like Anita Sarkeesian, for instance, or maybe Brianna Wu at the time.
Well, and yeah, that's actually, I think you and I have had this conversation before, or at least a comment before. If somebody calls me sexist or whatever, then I just go, yeah, but what does that have to do with the argument, right? Or misogynistic? It's like, yeah, sometimes, but my wife says some wild shit. I say some wild shit to her, like it's crazy. But at the same time, like, I don't have this like boiling antipathy to women or minorities, right? But I'll admit it. When I see an action film like Atomic Blonde, which by the way I've heard is a good movie, but Charlize Theron is like 115 pounds and she's got 200-pound Krav Maga Russian gangsters, and she's basically like hip throwing them over her shoulder into like cinder block walls and stuff. And I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, is she on steroids? Is she a super soldier? Like, my misogyny comes up a little bit, right? So when it comes to so when it comes to this stuff, like, I would say, like, I'm a casual misogynist. I'm not a professional misogynist, right? So I would just like lean into these, right, if they were insults. But I also understand that you're feeling like they're not proper characterizations.
Yeah, I feel like we're being misrepresented. And in Wikipedia's case, like this is like true on purpose. Ryu Long, he's one of the Wikipedia editors. He actually wrote, I think it was some huge percentage. I don't have the exact percent, but it was like 60% or more of the article was written by him, and he was actually raising money on Gamergazi, where Brianna Wu was a moderator. She was a moderator there, and he was raising money from that community. This was the anti-Gamergate subreddit, basically, to try and fly himself back from Japan to the U.S. or from U.S. to Japan, one of the two. And he also was taking directions from Zoe Quinn in the Crash Override Network chat group. So there's actually chat logs from the Skype Crash Override Network group chat group leak which many of the members, and this was Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, and Catherine Cross's like big chat group. They had a bunch of the anti-Gamergate e-celebs basically were in there. They did stuff like try to harass Foxygon, this Gamergate supporter, and get him kicked out of the military. They didn't like Brianna very much either. Actually, they gave her a hard time.
Really?
Oh yeah, she wasn't invited to the group.
Rude.
Yeah. So well, hey, look. If
I was Brianna, I would be insulted that they didn't think I was strong enough of a foot soldier for the anti-Gamergaters. I'd be like, this is bullshit, guys.
You don't want to be in this group. Yeah, you don't want to be in this group. But yeah, they didn't like her. They thought it was bad that she was a moderator of the Gamergazi because they thought it was a bad look optically.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm not invited to the Gamergate After Dark Discord server, so don't feel too bad.
Okay.
I've publicly been not invited, so.
Dang, rude.
Yeah,
you guys are foot soldiers in different tribes, and you're not getting no respect from the top guns. Well, so we have. Sorry. Continue.
All right, real quick. All right, so but also he also took direction from Zoe Quinn to edit articles on Wikipedia. There's actually chat logs of her being like, "Hey, Ryulong, can you fix this for me?" Not about the Gamergate article in particular. That was about a different article, but yeah.
Well, so sorry. Was he an employee of Wiki? Was he somebody who was submitting it? Was he a moderator? What was he?
No, he was just an editor, like a big editor. He's actually made thousands of edits to the article, and he's also made thousands of edits to the Rational Wiki article after he got banned on Wikipedia finally.
Wait, so did he use alts to do edits afterwards, or was it a result of his thousands of edits that he ended up getting smoked?
I think the fundraising thing on GamerGazi is what got him banned, I believe. But then he later moved on to Rational Wiki, and so if you read the article about Gamergate on there, that's actually by him, most of it.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so media coverage of Gamergate. Did you know that the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corp? So they actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff involving them. They've covered Gamergate a lot, and not done a super great job from our perspective. But one thing that they did was when Gamergate was first blowing up, the way they covered it didn't seem to be very, very accurate in two particular ways, I'll say. One of which is that they interviewed John Bowman at the CBC, interviewed Brianna Wu, actually, your friend, and then also some other people too. He interviewed Ginny Barrage and Jennifer Daw, who support Gamergate. Jennifer Daw is a game developer. So this is a woman who works in the industry, has a very different opinion of it on Gamergate than the anti-Gamergate people. She supports the movement, so does Ginny Barrage. John Bowman says that he never published Ginny's or Jennifer's interviews, though. He only published the ones with Brianna Wu and with one of the other anti-Gamergate people, I believe. And he says too that his editors told him not to publish the Gamergate side. So that's already very, very much like seems to be a problem. They're not presenting our perspective at all. They even interview us, but then their editors tell them to take it out. Then they also they do 3 interviews to talk about Gamergate on different CBC radio programs. I can give you the names of the exact people if you want. Like one Stephen Quinn. There's 2 other people too. I don't have their names immediately memorized.
Well, I'm not surprised by a liberal or progressive bend in CBC, particularly if you remember 17, 18. Do you remember the disastrous Jordan Peterson interview?
Oh,
where that gal was like, "So you're saying this?" And he's like, "No, that's not what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying." And she's like, "So you're saying this?" And it's like, "No." but dude, like that. What's funny is just real quick, we're in this like little autistic, at least I am. I'm in this like little autistic space of like Twitch and YouTube politics. And one of the weakest things you can do as a debater or a conversationalist is say you, right? If I'm saying you, then instead of allowing you to say what you're saying and then I'm responding to what you're saying, I'm trying to plant a perception to the audience of what you're saying. And so that whenever I hear the word you in an interview or a debate, I almost immediately I'm like, oh, this person's a piece of shit. So personal opinion. But anyways, sorry. So CBC biased. They're slamming Gamergate super hard. They're only publishing anti-Gamergate perspectives.
Yeah, even though they conduct the interviews, even we can even listen to them. They're on SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they also too they run with they interview. They do 3 interviews with Kim Lanigan. Kim Lanigan's their culture writer, or What's the Time rather, and she actually she presents a more anti-Gamergate perspective, but she does also give Gamergate credit. She does talk
Mhm.
about how there were legitimate ethical problems and stuff like that, but she does like lean more against it in her overall tenor of talking about it. But she does do sort of both sides a little bit. But she does this interview with 3 different people at the CBC, and the interviews are almost word for word the same. In fact, Lunar Archivist, he did an analysis, and it was something like 89%, I believe it was, word for word. No, sorry, it was 2 different. It was 77% of the whole interview was the same, 3
Mm.
different interviewers, and then it was 89% of the introduction of their opening statements
Mm-hmm.
were
They literally
identical.
copied and pasted it.
Yeah, it was, but it was 3
They
different people. It
copied and
wasn't
pasted, and
syndicated.
they
It was
added a couple of paragraphs. Well, so
yeah.
hold up. So were these? Are you saying the subject of the interview or the host and narrator and questioner?
Both.
What?
Both. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So it's funny. He sent me 3 interviews. He's like, you should listen to
Yeah.
these. I listened to the first one. I'm like, okay. I listened to the second one. I'm like, well, you sent me this twice. It's the same one. He's like, no, it's not the same one. It's a different
It's not
person.
the same.
I'm like, there's like 2 words there, 2 or 3 words that were different. I'm like, so it's not
So
like
they're
I don't
reading it.
remember
They're
this.
play acting interviews.
I
That's
guess so.
insane.
Yeah, it sounds
No,
like it.
see- no, that's
Sounds like it.
crazy to me because you know what's funny? So not talking too much smack. I'm saying this as a joke, but Lauren Southern, I think, has media training. Like she worked for the Rebel. She's done her own interview. She's done her own documentaries or whatever. But we did an interview where I was speaking extemporaneously. I didn't have a script, and then she had she kind of had like a script or bullet points or whatever. Well, what was funny is we did like 2 takes because in like the first 30 minutes we messed up some audio thing or something like that. So we do it again. And what I had thought had been extemporaneous speaking was actually her with her bullet points, like nailing it. And it was like, it was this thread that like pushed in a certain direction. And so I kind of noticed that and I was like, oh, this girl is fucking lethal, right? Like if you're not paying attention, she'll lead you right to the rhetorical slaughterhouse. So I would not be surprised if CBC, if they're even more professional than Rebel, if they're even more professional than other news agencies, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of had a similar thing where it feels extemporaneous, but it's not. They're leading you in a specific direction and they're trained in how to do that.
And, you know, Lord Southern actually, she was involved with Gamergate too.
Oh shit! Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. I'm friends with Brianna and I'm friends with Lauren, so I'm stuck in the middle.
Based. So
Yeah.
it's not just the CBC, a bunch of other sites too. I know we're nearing the end here a little bit. But like the New York
Well,
Times.
yeah. So let's hit the harassment then, because I
Yeah.
think that's going to be probably a majority of Brianna's objections. I'm assuming are going to be the categorization of harassment. I almost guarantee you that's going to be it, because so far it seems like, regardless of whether or not you want to say like we're using like sanitized terms, I feel like we've just been describing historical events. We haven't really been editorializing or covering up like too many incidents where we're like, oh, let's not talk about that, or let's talk about that in sanitized terms.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's talk about the harassment.
Okay. So I think that people involved with Gamergate on both sides have received harassment and also
Mhm.
have engaged in harassment. We can talk about specific examples of harassment if you want. I do have a lot of examples I've collected, but we can also talk about the statistics too. I've got that as well. There's 3 different studies that have been done on harassment on
If
Gamergate.
you can give me an overview in the stats, I mean, that's good enough for me. If there's something spicy or interesting, then I'm down for it. My presumption Okay, here's my presumption. My presumption is that you're going to have half a dozen examples of GamerGaters being douchebags and harassing, but I'm assuming that you're going to have like a ace up your sleeve where anti-GamerGaters were trying to, I think you mentioned it earlier, they were trying to like get somebody canned or blackballed or like blacklisted in their industry and all that kind of stuff.
I do have examples of both, yes, but I was not going to
Yeah.
go that route. I was going to talk about the 3 studies, at least just
Sure.
just
Let's do it.
okay. All right. So the first one here is by Women Action Media. I'll link this in here for you. I don't expect you to read the full thing right now,
Mhm.
but basically so the methodology they used was there's a anti-Gamergate. There's a list of people involved with Gamergate according to Randy Harper. She's an anti-Gamergate person. She created this list of Gamergate people based on who you follow on Twitter, and if you follow a certain number of people, they will put you on the list because you followed X number of Gamergate people or people that Randy considers Gamergate people. About
Mm.
10,000 accounts were on this list altogether. And so Women Action Media, what they did was they worked with Twitter, who gave them access to their data, basically their internal information. And so anytime people filed a report during this study period, which I think was like a month and a half or something like that, roughly, November
Mhm.
2014. So what they did in November 2014 was that if you filed a report on a tweet, it would give you the option to report it additionally to Women Action Media for research purposes.
Mm.
And so during this period, this November period, November 2014, 0.66% of the accounts on the GamerGate harassment list, the list
Mhm.
of GamerGate people, only 0.66% of them had engaged in harassment, according to Twitter,
Mhm.
during that month, during the month of November. And so yeah, basically 0.66% of the people involved had engaged in harassment, according to Twitter. Uh,
That makes perfect sense to me. Like oftentimes when you're talking about social movements or people who are going to talk shit. As a matter of fact, I have the perfect example. So I did that debate, interview, conversation, whatever you want to call it, with Lav, and then I got half dozen Twitter DMs and I got like a few dozen YouTube comments. However, if you think about that, that's spit in the ocean. That's almost nothing. At the time, I think Steven Destiny, he had like 100,000 subs, something like that. And so if you're talking about 100,000 subs, you're talking about 5,000 to 10,000 people who watch live. You're talking about, a few 100,000 people who might watch a VOD or whatever, right? So let's, sorry, calculator, real quick. I'm just going to see if my numbers are identical to
it was
GamerGate.
60. It was 65 individual accounts.
Right. So, and this is like a massive movement, right? So, if you're talking about, so let's just say there's like, I don't know, 10,000 people who watch a live stream Destiny, and let's say like 30 people went out of their way to message me or something like that. So, 30 into 10,000. I always mess up my percentages. I forget how it does it, but mine is substantively less than. Okay, so I felt like I was harassed, and I was significantly less harassed than Gamergate. I'm just a pussy. I'm just a sensitive soul. That's what's going on. All right, so that was the stat for the Gamergaters. What
Okay.
other stat did you have?
So we also have another study that was done by Brandwatch. They were hired by Newsweek to do a study.
Mm,
Newsweek, I feel, misrepresented this. I feel like they portrayed it in a very certain way. We can talk about that if you want, but that's not really important to the underlying data, I guess. But they're
mm,
found in the Brandwatch study that 1.26% so use a different methodology. What they did
mm,
was they looked at the hashtag itself. Um, so they looked at 500,000 tweets on the Gamergate hashtag. Or wait, I'm sorry, hang on. Yeah, 500,000 tweets on the Gamergate hashtag, and
mm,
they found that 1.26% of the tweets had contained not harassment. They didn't look at harassment, but they looked at negative sentiment, quote unquote.
mm,
Um, but they contained a negative sentiment towards either Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, Leah Alexander, or Zoe Quinn.
mm.
So we don't know how they define negative sentiment though, because Brandwatch and Newsweek never released the full methodology, so we don't know
Sure.
how they define that.
I would be willing to give it on a certain level of faith. Not that there isn't something like, oh, Anita Sarkeesian never played video games. What a dick. right? Like I wouldn't consider that would not reach my personal threshold of harassment, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, if that was within, I don't know, 10,000 tweets or something like that of the 500,000 tweets, or so
Well,
I
it
guess it
was
would be 50,000.
6,000. It was
Right, right.
6,000 tweets. So look, I get
Yeah.
it. You know, if you're
Yeah, so if that was included, I would be like, okay, well, if I got like 30 of those, then I'd be a little pissed, right?
well, so actually, um, it was so supposedly there were 2 million tweets on the GamerGate
Mm,
hashtag at the time, roughly. And so this was a sampling of a fourth of them, 25%. So if
sure.
we assume that the rate of negative sentiment holds, right, at the 1.26%, so that's 6315 times 4. So 25,000 tweets, I guess, contained negative sentiment towards one of four people.
Specific individuals. Yeah.
Well, one of four people, yeah.
Mhm.
But like how they define negative sentiment, like you said, I don't consider you suck or like this person's terrible or like it doesn't even be you. It would be like this person's terrible. I guess I wouldn't call that to
Mhm.
be harassment, but also I don't think you could ignore that 99% of the hashtag doesn't contain negative sentiment towards you.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and again, this is where I think I'm sympathetic to both sides. I'm sympathetic in the regard to the fact that if you're a part of a social movement that's calling from some level of change, and you despise something. I have said things at Hassan Piker. I legitimately think he is one of the dumbest people in media. I think he's one of the biggest morons of our age, and his success is anathema to like human beings having souls to me. Like I believe in God less when I realize how successful Hassan Piker is, right? And same thing with like Jackson Hinkle. Like I am convinced that Jackson Hinkle, who sims for like Russia and Iran and all that kind of stuff, I feel like he's either a plant by the CIA who's allowed to do whatever he wants to do because he's a plant to like rope in other people, or he's actually just getting paid by foreign governments to do what he does because he's the most annoying anti-Western propagandist that I've ever laid my eyes on. But the point is, like, I've said mean things to them that I would probably consider that if it was a part of a deluge, it would be probably considered harassment by those people. Now, whether or not it would rise to the level of criminality of stalking and harassment, probably not. Like I quote tweeted you and I said mean things about you because I think you're stupid, right?
No, I get it. I get receiving a large number of mean tweets, or tweets that I wouldn't say mean, but like tweets that are negative. I could probably feel really shitty.
Yeah,
But like,
hurts my
unfortunately,
fucking
that's the
feelings. I'll
nature
tell
of
you
Twitter.
that.
That's the reality of social media, though. Unfortunately.
Okay, so that was our first series of stats. I have a feeling that you had a anti Gamergator stats
No,
as well, that,
we don't
or maybe
actually
not
have.
stats examples.
Well, I guess we do have. I do have stats actually on the anti-game, GamerGate too. But there's this third study. It was done by the Nimbus. He supports GamerGate. That's his bias. Just a heads up.
Hmm.
He found that actually I don't like the methodology necessarily that he used, but
Hmm.
he found that there was more harassment by people on the GamerGate hashtag. This was another one that looks at the GamerGate hashtag, but they found that
Hmm.
there was more quote unquote harassment against GamerGate supporters on the hashtag than there was by supporters on the hashtag. But that
Hmm.
also, he defines harassment as like insults, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like,
So there was a bunch of people who were using the hashtag to call Gamergators incel basement dwelling
yeah,
pieces of shit,
yeah.
whatever.
I don't
Yeah.
call that harassment. You can call me a basement dwelling piece of shit. I don't care. Um, based.
All right,
Okay, so
cool.
anyway, examples. Let's see. We do have right. So Pterodax, one of the people I've interviewed, he did
Hmm.
harass Brianna Wu. He owns up to this. He also harassed Zoe Quinn. He also allegedly harassed Acid Man, the GamerGate HQ board owner, but he now denies this. At the time, he he claimed on IRC that he has his docs, and I've got
Hmm.
logs of this. But now he's like, oh no, I was just kidding. I don't actually have a docs. So, but he
That's one of the problems, real quick. That's one of the problems with post-ironic shit posting is that you can't tell like when somebody is going to be
mhm.
like do something fucked up, right? Like, so for instance, somebody's joking about the Sam Hyde, I'm gonna kill you, Hassan Biker, and he's like, in a video game, and he's like, no, in real life. It's like if I listen. if I pissed off Sam Hyde and he said that out loud to a crowd of a few 100,000 people or a few million people, I would be legitimately terrified of Sam Hyde. If I bumped into Sam Hyde after that, I would be carrying heat and ready to smoke him because I am not fist fighting that dude. That dude is nuts. So he could be
Sam Hyde.
Yeah, exactly. So like he could be like, you know, he'd bow up and then I'd shoot him and then he'd be like, I was joking. And I'd be like, sorry, like my bad. But anyway,
All right. So
yeah.
Pterodax, he's a third-party troll. He was against. He wasn't involved with GamerGate or anti-gamer. He was like he was sort of his own third. He just wanted to do it for the lulz. For him, was fun. So he tweeted a picture of a gun at Brianna Wu in 2015. And he was condemned by Sargon of Akkad and by a bunch of other people on Twitter because Sargon was asking people to condemn this and report it. And then also too, he tweeted out he tweeted out that he would give Super Smash Brothers DLC codes to people if they sent death threats to Zoe Quinn and blamed Gamergate for it. And he claims, according to him, some people took him up on this. Zoe Quinn actually retweeted him tweeting this, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And then
retweeted without a quote tweet? Without saying like, hey, this is messed up.
She did. She said, go get your free games, guys. She did quote tweet it.
Yo, that is feeding the trolls.
Yeah,
okay.
But
all right.
He also went on live streams. Kind of like you're doing right now.
To clarify, I blame him, right? However, if you are being harassed, potentially getting doxxed, people are like stalking you and all that kind of stuff, don't make it easier for them. Don't make it like a joke. Don't get them together. That's bananas.
No, that's probably the not good advice to deal with future harassment.
Right.
But yeah, so she retweeted it actually, and he actually talks about this in the interview. I didn't believe him at first, but then he sent me a screenshot of it. I seen archives. I believe there's an archive of it. I could check for you this at the end if you'd like. But and then also too, he went on live streams and he would say like the N-word to try and get the YouTuber hit with a strike or make them take down the video, right? Trolling them that way. And he claims on Ryzen IRC that he has the docs of Acid Man, the GamerGate HQ board owner. But when I asked him about this and I sent him the archive of the IRC chat logs, he says that he was just saying that to troll him. He didn't actually have the docs. But so there's people like that, third-party troll, but also Ethan Ralph. He was involved with GamerGate and in Milo Yiannopoulos. I think that they probably did harass Brianna Wu, or depending on how your definition of harassment is. But like one thing that Ralph and Milo both did is there was a rumor from an internet forum that they found out about that Brianna Wu was supposedly transgender, and they wrote articles about this. Now Brianna since come out of the closet and stuff. I know that's I'm not like outing anybody here, but Milo and Ralph both wrote articles about the situation about her supposedly being trans, without her really wanting this to be public. And it didn't seem like they really had, in my personal opinion, a good journalistic.
Yeah, there was no higher noble goal there.
It's not like
they were just being dicks.
They were just being dicks, and they shouldn't have done that. I think that that's wrong. And I've also talked with JT Vega, nice guy. Don't harass anybody, of course, but like don't try and like hold this against him or anything. He feels really bad about it. But he at the time was a YouTuber and he supported Gamergate. He talked about the Brianna Wu situation too. And I've actually in my interview with him, I confronted him on this, on him doing this. He says that he says that he wanted to report on it as like a journalist. He felt like, look, the story's already out there. I gotta run with it, and so I'm gonna make a video talking about the situation. And to his credit, in his defense, he was a little bit more careful with how he talked about it. He's like, look, I know this is a sensitive subject, so, something along those lines at the very beginning. But I could understand why Brianna Wu feels like she got harassed. Of course, I would.
100%. Well, dude, Milo. What's insane about Milo is Milo, through being a shitposting troll, he hit like national headlines, right? He got on Bill Maher. The Battle of Berkeley was like a national news story. His beef with I forget the girl's first name, but whoever Jones, who was in Ghostbusters
Leslie
and
Jones.
SNL, Leslie Jones, his beef with her, hit national
No, yeah,
newsline
he was an
headlines.
asshole there too. And
Yeah,
Liana
and
Kersner. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's funny looking back at that time period, even from my own perspectives on these people. It's like Milo, in my personal opinion, I watched him on Dave Rubin. I was like, oh, this dude's hilarious, and he's an asshole, to people I don't like. And the main thing that he was being an asshole at the time about was about like majority Muslim immigration in the Middle East and from the Middle East and North Africa. And so I was thinking like, okay, well, here's a guy who's gay, who's standing up for Republicans, standing up for conservatives, shit posting and trolling against like other people. But what I kind of realized after a while, it's like that was his one beat. Right, like his one beat was just being rude or mean to people that he thought were assholes.
It was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. I think that I criticized.
Well, you have to have something more to say than that.
But
you have to have something more to say besides like these people suck. It's like, okay, well, you need something more than that, right? So yeah. Okay. What else?
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that Milo's behavior or Ralph's behavior in that instance was.
Well, they've both paid consequences since that time, for sure.
But then also too, there were other examples too. Like, Alex Baldwin, the Hat Man. He's friends with Brianna.
I'm unfamiliar.
Okay, well they've been on Tim Pool show together. Russian man Tim Pool, Mr. Tenant Media, but he false flagged harassment against himself on GG Revolt. GG Revolt was this breakaway community. They had a lot of disagreements with the mainstream GamerGate community. This was the more like right wing segment of Gamer. The people involved with GG Revolt were on average more right wing than the average GamerGate person probably. But like I'm not saying everybody there was right wing, and there were also a lot of conservatives who opposed them too. But basically, TLDR, they were a breakaway kind of group, and he was the owner of Kotaku in Action at the time, and a YouTuber and a podcaster. He might have been done with his podcast at that point, but he false flagged harassment to himself. He says that he doesn't really remember this, but he says that the IP address on the post on GG Revolt that harassed him, according to the admins, came from his personal email address or his personal IP address where he's posted before. So they believe it was him, and he believes it was him too now. So he false flagged himself.
He just got wasted one night, and he was just like, "I'm gonna do it."
Well, he says he has
I'm gonna talk shit about myself.
He says he had mental health problems at the time.
Yeah, me too, bud. Not like I fucking.
Yeah.
No, I like it. Yeah, I like it when people like remember. They remember this stuff. So real quick, somebody in chat. So Old School says, "Who is this guest? Why is he here?" So this is Tachyon Blue. Him and Miss Brianna don't get along. However, he was a gentleman involved in GamerGate. I would say a GamerGate historian. Might be my description of you to a certain degree. And he's writing a book. That's why he's here. And we've had a previous conversation, and he was tactful and polite. Despite maybe him and Brianna not seeing eye to eye on things, and so I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. That's why he's here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So sorry. Give me the next thing, and then honestly, I think I probably do want to kind of like summarize it and wrap it.
Okay, cool. I guess. Well, do you want an example of harassment against GamerGate or against anti-GamerGate?
I don't have a preference, so I feel like we have examples of GamerGate people where we talked about the stats when it related to Twitter. We talked about the Ethan Ralph and Milo Yiannopoulos both being assholes. We talked about the third-party troll. So I do feel like we have some acknowledgement of the fucked up sides of GamerGate. Yeah. And then when it comes to the anti-GamerGate side, I think so far we've had they try to blackball somebody. They try to fire somebody. And then we also have false flag harassment operations. I think that's what we have so far.
Yeah, well, then I guess we could talk about. Can I give two quick examples?
Sure.
Okay, one of them is going to be a pro GamerGate harassment. Okay, so one of the actually no, I don't want to attack. I don't want to. I'm just going to do the other one because. Okay. I guess.
Go for it.
Fuck it, let's just talk about it. Do you want to talk about Brianna Wu and her harassment story?
Sure.
Okay. We don't have to, Connor.
It's okay. No,
we can just we can let it slide.
let me preface it. Okay, the I think that the truth is always going to prevail, right? Reality is always going to prevail, right? So if something bad happened, it happened in your past or whatever, then you own it, you move on, right? And then also, Brianna and I have had conversations about like the past decades of her life and all that kind of stuff. And she's basically said like, yeah, hey, I did some wild shit back then, blah 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 blah. Now, whether or not she's had specific conversations about specific details that you're going to get into, I don't think that's necessarily happened. However, I think there's like a general acknowledgement that this was maybe not the peak, the peak of who Brianna Wu wants to be as a person. So, if you, with that caveat being said, if you want to get into it, go ahead.
I'll be tactful-ish.
Please.
Okay, so I'll say that look, we're all different. We're all human beings. I don't hold any ill will against Brianna Willie. I do. So I guess I'll just say that look, we're all human beings. We're not the same people we were 10 years ago. Look, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. Brianna's not the same person we were 10 years ago. We're all learning and growing as people. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we even make big mistakes, and we say things that we kind of later regret. Right? That happens to all of us. It's a human phenomenon. So Brianna Wu's entrance into the GamerGate conversation, as far as I can tell, appears to be this BroLols Twitter account. She made this Twitter account called BroLols. She used it to troll the GamerGate people. She says it was satire. She doesn't deny this. She admits to it. I can even link you the archives. I got all the archives of all this stuff.
By the way, quick advice to people at home. This is why you don't have alts. Okay, if you guys will remember, Bo Blacks had a throbbing horse something, and he got caught, trolling. Other people have gotten caught trolling. Don't have alts. It's an easy way to shitpost your way into trouble.
Yeah, and that was so she started using that account on September 18th, 2014. And then on September 20th, just 2 days later, she says it was her account. She does own up to that. But then on hang on. Okay, October 10th, the next month, Brianna says the police came by. Husband and I are going somewhere safe. Remember, GamerGate isn't about attacking women. She tweets this out, and she says that the Twitter user death. So this is in response. So she tweets that out in response to this Twitter user, Chatter Whiteman. The name of the user is Death to Brianna. They have 3 followers, and they threaten Wu, and they threaten to kill her, and they claim to have her address, and they post a link to an address that appears to be hers, right? So docs, right? And so Brianna then says that the police came by, her and her husband are fleeing. Remember, GamerGate's not about attacking women. And then she says she fled her home. She goes to New York Comic-Con, where she was scheduled to speak at. She's got a speaking engagement there. She's a game developer. She's working on Revolution 60 at the time, right? And she tweets about how she's homeless, but then she does interviews from her house, strangely. She does interviews on October 13th, 14th, 27th, November 11th, and December 9th, during the period where, as far as I'm aware, she still seems to be homeless. So I'm just curious about why she's doing these media interviews from her house during this period of time where she says she's homeless. But she has an answer for this. She says,
no, go for it before I get out my broom.
All right. So she says that the reason she did these interviews was because she wanted to, I believe her excuse. She's welcome to jump on and disagree if I'm misrepresenting, but I believe she wanted to do the interviews because it was important to her, and to get her story out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you can sweep harder by all means.
Okay, let me sweep harder. So this is coming from my background, and by the way, of course, Brianna and I are friends. I feel compelled to defend her honor a little bit. Obviously, this was a decade ago. Who knows what happened? But I'm just using my cop brain. Okay, so law enforcement physical security is actually like incredibly fragile, right? I have a window to my right now. Somebody could, basically take me out. They could walk up to my window. They could take me out. All they would need is a pistol and my address and know who I am and all that kind of stuff. There's not much I could do about it, to be honest. But the truth is that there's levels of deterrence that kind of go into like physical security. So for instance, I have dogs. They're going to bark when somebody's close to the property. I have an alarm system. I also have firearms, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of like, I roll with the probabilities of what's going to happen, right? Well, when somebody threatens your specific address, unless you're really, really, really rich, you're not going to sell and move, right? What you're going to do is you're going to deal in probabilities of when you're physically threatened. And the truth is that the more people that are present, the less physically threatened you're going to feel. If you have witnesses, if you have a camera crew, if you have cops local, all that kind of stuff, then you're going to be more secure in your home, because the chances of a murderer being willing to walk past a bunch of witnesses in order to gun you down is a lot lower than if you're by yourself or if you're just with your family, right? Now, I'm not saying that like Brianna Wu consciously knew this. I'm just saying that everyone kind of subconsciously knows this when they're under threat, right? And then what I would say too is that you deal with the volume of threats you're getting. So if I get a death threat today, I'm going to be on high alert for the next week or 2 weeks. But then as the time rolls on, I'm going to relax my posture, right? So if we're talking about her getting death threats, and by the way, I don't know the exact timeline, but let's say she gets death threats in September, mid-October, end of October, she still might have the cops like ready to call. She might have a new alarm system or something like that, but she's going to be relaxing that security posture as time goes on, even if she still feels under threat.
Yeah, I find it a little bit weird, especially when later on in February of 2015, she makes posts harassing herself on her Steam forums. But she has an excuse for this too. She says that the reason she made these posts was because she says that she was getting a lot of mean messages on Steam forums at the time, comments or posts on the forums that were harassing her, and so she wanted to guide all of the harassment to go to one place. So she made this thread where she asks people, is Brianna Wu a terrible person? Go have at it. But she says that she did that because she wanted to guide the harassment to one place. Now I've looked at the forums. I don't see evidence of like there be hundreds of posts on the forums, but there was also a comment section. I don't see like a lot of harassing messages on there, but there are comments that say that some posts were deleted. So there is evidence that there was some moderation activity that occurred. So it is possible that she did get this harassed message. So she could be telling the truth there, 100%.
Well, and then I'm not going to
agnostic on
sweep
all
as
this.
hard for people being mean in sections and then her trying to direct people to a different thing. But again, the thing that I would say is obviously this is a decade ago too, and we're what month was this or year was this?
This was September and October for the first stuff we talked about, and then February 2015 for the
yeah. So if she said in private or in public, if she said, yeah, there was a lot of people talking shit about me. I didn't want them to talk shit about me there. I was trying to do something else in that forum. As a result, I tried to redirect them to a different place. I'd be like, you know what? It was a decade ago. Who gives a shit? If she was like, hey, that's just like an excuse I came up with. It was a decade ago. I was pissed off. There was a bunch of people fucking being dicks to me. And I kind of wanted to like, have a documented incident of somebody being a dick to me that I could point to. And that's why I made a comment against myself or whatever. I'd be like, it's a decade ago, right? Who gives a shit? The thing is that I would say though is obviously like you don't want this to be going on now, right? And the only reason why I say that is because I like to think that I'm a person who deals in truth. I try to deal with truth as much as literally as physically possible. I never commit lies of commission. The worst I will ever do is commit lies of omission when I feel like I'll be fucking over somebody else. So yeah, so we should always deal in truth, and if something can be destroyed by the truth, then it deserves to be.
Yeah, and I do want to say real quick, like, look, I know it's kind of tech Brianna hour, but like the reality is, like, I don't know, we're at that point now, but like the fact is, we're all, like I said, we're all only human beings, and look, I don't think anybody even really cares that much that you perhaps misrepresented events 10 years ago. I think what people care about though is that you just never really owned up to it. And you should like if indeed you misrepresented things in the past, I think it would be better to just come forward and be like, hey, look, yes, I did get harassment. That's horrible. Here's here's the stuff that did happen, but I did paint with a very broad brush here, and I did say that the GamerGate people were, these misogynists, and I did call them. She called them terrorists on ABC News. That's what she said.
That's a little extreme, but sure.
Yeah, and but she should just come over and be like, hey, look, this is a very diverse group of people from all walks of life and political backgrounds. Some of them were assholes who harassed me. Other people weren't. I have a bad. You can even say that you have a bad experience with it. You personally hold the movement in ill regard because of Ralph's actions or Milo or because of other people that you think did bad stuff to you, right? But 1,000%. But just be just a little bit more nuanced with it and try to correct the record. I think working with the GamerGate people and trying to help correct this, I think would be like the best course forward. And that's personally just my advice, but I don't think you're going to take it. So like whatever. So
well, I'll see what she says either between now and Wednesday or on Wednesday if we talk about it. So, here's my thing, at least from my overview. I feel like a vast majority of the stream was actually a summary of like facts. I feel like that's what a vast majority of the stream was. We did get into some nitty gritty, but as far as I can tell, a summary of what we talked about is Zoe Quinn kicked this off. There was a bunch of people who were wildly passionate about this. They created online groups in order to advocate for themselves publicly. One of the interesting takeaways that I have here is that it hasn't been replicated. I can't think of an example before, and I can't think of an example since. And I think a lot of the energy that would have been related to GamerGate style events has been sucked away by streamer personalities. I feel like we deal more in cults of personality than we do policy or public advocacy. And then it seemed like there were dirtbags on both sides who did pretty dirtbaggy things, and they all hurt each other. That's kind of my perspective. What else do you? We are hitting the 2-hour mark, so I kind of want to talk to chat for a minute and then probably wrap it up. But what else do you want to share with chat before you dip? And then also feel free to plug your book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess first I'll just say, Connor, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Brianna, for joining the discussion too for a few minutes, I suppose. Thank you to chat and everybody for watching. And if you want to support my work, I've interviewed over 70 people involved with GamerGate on both sides for a multi-volume series of books. You can visit gamergatebook.com or the People of GamerGate on Kickstarter. We just yesterday hit over 50%. We're over 50% backed, but we're not there just yet. We have $3,719 of the $6,000 goal. So please help us get over that finish line. I think there's a lot we can learn from GamerGate. I think that the historical record on this is wrong. I don't think a historical record on this is developed yet. It's really too soon. But I think that the Wikipedia narrative, or like the Brianna Wu version of events that you may hear on Wednesday, I think that, or maybe not. Maybe we'll see something unique and interesting.
We'll see.
Yeah, maybe. And I think also she should probably apologize to the people she harmed too, like Total Biscuit. And yeah.
Sorry, am I mixing up Total Biscuit with somebody else? Did Total Biscuit pass?
He's passed away. Sorry, but she should apologize for her comments regarding him, and also to like Troy Levitt.
Is Troy Levitt still alive?
He is.
Okay, good.
He's the Hogwarts. He's the lead developer of Hogwarts Legacy. He actually lost his job in part because of Brianna.
Oof.
Yeah. But anyway, GamerGateBook.com. I've interviewed over 70 people involved. We talk about ethics. We talk about journalism. We talk about the culture, where we talk about artistic freedom, censorship, huge array of topics. It's a really good story. I'm really proud of the work I've done, and I think it's a really great detailed take. You can find out more information at gamergatebook.com. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I appreciate you coming on. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you as well.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know. I think that was, I think from Brianna's perspective, I think it's just too close to home. It's raw, right? It's like a raw historical event. So just casually having that conversation was not to her taste. But we'll hash it out. If she wants to hash it out in private, we'll hash it out in private. If she wants to hash it out in public, we'll hash it out in public. But I would be curious to hear her narrative, because that gentleman, you could say you could say like, oh, he's sweeping, he's sanitizing, he's doing this, he's doing that. But again, I feel like 70% after 15 years or so, this was 10 years ago. This was 2014. So I feel like 70% of that was just factual analysis. Now you could say that he sanitized the events to favor his side, or he hyperbolized the events on the other side in order to make them look bad. But I think you're going to expect that, right, from the source. So if you have somebody who's anti-Gamergate, you're going to expect them, you're going to expect them to emphasize the sins of Gamergaters, and you're going to expect them to minimize the sins of anti-Gamergaters. If you have somebody who's pro-Gamergate, as obviously he was involved in it. He's literally an interviewer of it. He's, kind of like I mentioned, like a Gamergater historian, I guess. Then obviously if he's a pro-Gamergater, then he's going to sanitize his side a little bit, and that's normal. That's like normal. So I think as viewers and as an interviewer, I guess, you kind of just need to be prepared to take your subject with a grain of salt, and you need to be prepared to understand that people are going to have opposing opinions. That's about it. If you do have questions or concerns, go ahead and put them in the chat. You can do @counterfire. We did get a donation from Vokes earlier tonight. And I did read it earlier, but I'll read it again. As a Gamergate veteran, I can say there was and still is a subset of grifters who jump in and join us for the discourse. Lefty bashing was on the menu. Yeah, so, I think about that sometimes. So you got people like... who's the big guy? Jeremy from the Quartering. You got people like that. You have the guy who talks about pronouns, Los Angeles, California politics, pronouns. You got that guy. And by the way, like he could have cool content besides that, but obviously that was like a flash in the pan moment of him kind of critiquing progressive culture. You got the Concord issue. You got some people talking about, I'll tell you right now, I saw Call of Duty with one of the executions being a unicorn hooving a person into the air and then farting in their face that like liquefies their corpse. And I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with Call of Duty? This started 40 years ago. Like it started in the 1990s, I think, with a Call of Duty World War II game. And then it developed into the thousands. And when I jumped on the Call of Duty train, it was Modern Warfare, right? And with Modern Warfare, it was kind of gritty. Like I understand like people sometimes describe it as an arcade shooter, but it was kind of a gritty arcade shooter, I guess. There wasn't any bullet drop, but the multiplayer was hardcore. The weapons were accurate. The campaign saw you fighting, I think, either in Iraq or in like an unnamed country. And this was during the War on Terror. And it was excellent. It was like a great video game. And so it launched this whole genre, and it's just gotten more and more cartoony, more and more Fortnite, more and more inappropriate for its own title. It's very frustrating. And I would view that as like only possible if there was a 40 or 50-year-old man. So I'm late 30s, right? If there was a 37-year-old man who had played Modern Warfare in the development team's room and somebody suggested a unicorn execution, I would have blown a fucking gasket if I was in the development team. I would have been like, fuck you. It's not happening. We're here for actual like gritty combat violence. What the fuck are you talking about with a unicorn fart execution? Go fuck yourself. That would have been my opinion. But obviously I wasn't there. And my suspicion is that there was an effeminate man or a woman who suggested that. And then the men in the room didn't have the stones to say, that's retarded, we're not doing that. Like I almost guarantee you that's what it's going. That's what happened. But you know what's going to happen? Is those people are going to create gaps in the market for good products like Space Marine 2, and Space Marine 2 and Helldivers 2 are going to make tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think the market will correct it. So I think we'll be okay in the long run. I'm not too worried about it. If anything, I see the winds changing now. So I'm praying for it. Vogue says, I mean, I don't know, but y'all are still censoring Lolicon as base. No, I agree. What's one of the funnier things about it is that I think that they probably had a more libertine opinion on art than I would have. And I would actually side a little bit more with the social conservatives who want to push art specifically to promote messages. What's interesting is that people have mentioned, they've mentioned the fact that they're like, oh, I don't want messaging in my video games. It's like, no, I want messaging. I 100% want messaging. If you look at Space Marine 2, the message is be brave, be strong, trust your brothers, do the right thing to the best of your ability, and conquer insurmountable odds. No matter how dire the situation is, you should be a warrior and a man and face those odds with steely determination and creativity and try to overcome your enemies, right? Like those are all things that I don't want my son to think of, like, I don't know, random Americans as his enemies and start beating up people on the street. But I do want him to carry that kind of masculinity and that sense of like warriorhood and that mentality. I want him to carry that with him. And so that's a message. That is a message. And I want that message for my child. I think it's positive masculinity. So yeah, 100%. I want messages in my video games. I just want them to be pro-social messages. Vokes also comments at Counterfire, to be honest about Atomic Blonde, she gets the shit kicked out of her a lot. That's welcome news to me. I was probably talking a lot of shit about that just because of what I saw in the trailers. But I do want to, if you're saying that, I probably owe it a shot to watch it to see if the amount that she gets her ass kicked overcompensates for her ability to kick ass. And then that might actually make it a compelling watch. John Kennedy says, Connor is getting ready to bring the child's hammer down. Yes, this is my son's hammer. Oh, I can't really show it to you guys, but the heavy bolt pistol is like 80% done. It took me 6 months to figure out how to do the normal bolter, and I would still change the handguard a little bit. The heavy bolt pistol is done next to me. I just need to paint it, and I need to get a flash can for the front of it. So the flash candle is like the shroud. It's like the barrel shroud. I need to get that, and then I need to paint it. And then that thing's done. It's finished. It's sanded. I've already done 2 layers of primer in sanding. I need to paint it its colors. I need to varnish it, and I need to put a flash can on it, and I'll have a heavy bolt pistol. And I'm going to 3D print a thigh holster for it. I do have the clips for it. That way I can mount it to my belt, and boom, I'm going to go shoot another bolter video and blow some stuff up, and I'm going to have a heavy bolt pistol on my hip, and if I feel like it, I'll blow something up with the heavy bolt pistol too. It's going to be a great day. Now, that might not happen until January, so you're, holidays and all that. So my apologies. My apologies if I don't get it out to you sooner than that, but it's going to be a great year. It's already a great year. I'm not kidding, guys. So thank you for watching. We peaked out around 50. But we were between like 35 and 45 the entire night. I understand like GamerGate and a one-on-one conversation. That's not always the sexiest content, right? But on a Warhammer side, just sharing success. Obviously, I'm excited about the bolter and the bolt pistol and all that kind of stuff. But they released secret level, basically what I would say is a Astartes 2. It's that good. It's so good. And I did a breakdown of it, and Amazon released it almost immediately. I have 140,000 views in 24 hours. I got 20.5K watch hours. I got 700 subs. And so far, just with that, I'm going to be real, I got $400 off of that one video. That's bananas. That is an excellent video. 140,000 views in 24 hours. That's a fucking banger. So banging. And I cut out half of the runtime. I have the first combat sequence, and then I have the demon sequence, and I have the end, and the rest of it is lore. So it's not like I just like stole it and then I'm like in the corner like it's like, no, I thoughtfully clipped it up and put in lore, and it's good and people love it. It's great. Oh, scrolling. John Kennedy for $20 says, I know you're an authoritarian centrist and all, but how do you square the taking of shit talking and repurposing it into anti-everything woman with being friendly with Brianna? Let me read that again. I know you are an authoritarian centrist and all, but how do you square the taking of shit talking and repurposing it as anti-everything woman with being friendly with Brianna? John Kennedy, I don't know if you've caught any streams. I might not be answering your question fully the way that you want me to answer it. Thank you for the donation, by the way. The Brianna I would say is probably, in my estimation, a different person than she was a decade ago. But also, we've had conversations over the past year, both private and public, that have kind of shown me, I think, where she's at. And similar to, I'm just going to say it, similar to Lauren. So what happened with Lauren was she was 19 years old. She had some conservative sympathies. She went to a conservative conference. She had an intelligent conversation with whoever runs Rebel News. They almost instantly recruited her because, let's face it, she's a blonde gal and she can talk well and all that kind of stuff. They headhunted her almost immediately, brought her into Rebel. She posted a few videos. She went viral almost instantly as a political commentator. So she was a 20-year-old, and she's talking about conservative values to a few 100,000 people, right? She's a kid. She doesn't know shit about fuck. And on top of that, she's getting into like all these crazy situations. Like she talks about it in one of her videos. The person who flew her out for the Amber Heard slut walk and gave her a place to stay tried to hook up with her while she was there. And she was like, no, we don't have that relationship. We're not friends. We don't know each other. You just helped me do this thing. And now you're trying to like hook up and we don't even know each other. Get the fuck out of here. And so like she was going there to criticize feminism while experiencing like a weirdly misogynistic, pressured sexual environment, right? So there was already an incongruence between the philosophy and ideology and the people that she supported politically versus what was happening in the real world. And you can watch her videos. She has 2 videos, one of them talking about her personal life and one of them talking about all the creators that she bumped into. But almost every creator that she bumped into was like a hypocrite or a liar, or they were doing too many drugs or drinking too much, or they weren't effective, or they were abusing their employees or whatever. Basically, everybody she bumped into was disappointing her. And so I say all of that to say that reality obliterated her ideology. And I would say that that happened to Brianna Wu too, not just because of October 7th, but also because of like all the wild progressive shit that she was a part of. It always cannibalizes everybody. And as soon as Brianna had some heterodox takes on transitioning in binary versus non-binary trans, she got cannibalized. So she can still be a liberal. She can still be a progressive, but she can see the flaws within the ideology and the flaws within the people who espouse the ideology and not want to associate with them anymore. So she's not the same like firebrand progressive that she was a decade ago. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think you could properly characterize Lauren as the same person that she was 10 years ago. I don't think you can properly categorize Brianna as the same person she was 10 years ago. Elite Eater says Flash gets just released Space King 2. I was going to watch this, but came here to say this. Listen, thanks for dropping by. And to be honest, I'm excited about that because that gives me an opportunity to break down parts 1 and 2 as next week's content. I'm excited about that because I actually did get like a healthy chunk of comments on from when Space King 1 released where they were like, hey, when are you going to break this down? When are you going to break this down? And I was like, it's a silly Flash gets video. Why would I break this down? But it is good. It's darn good. So I think that breaking down the parallels and trying not to break down the humor, unless I feel like it needs to be pointed out how cool it is. You know, no, I think it'd be fun content, basically. The other lesson in Space Marine 2 is to always select the Melta. True. The Melta grapes. Absolutely. Blue tis... Hold on. I gotta zoom in. Blue tea is poo. Tea is TV. Bloot is poot is TV? Sure. Blutus Pootus TV. That's what I'm going to go with. They don't make protagonists vulnerable anymore. You can be a badass while having flaws like cowardice or anger. It makes their positive quality stronger and sends a stronger message when they overcome them. I agree with you, Blutus Pootus TV. I agree that nuanced characters are always fun, but you know, you gotta, sometimes you just need a hero, right? Elite Eater says the first one that I saw was the IRL Bolter video. That's very base. And I got deeper into the YouTube space due to Gokanaru and food shops. Oh no. Oh, well, I'm sorry that's how you got into this space. My apologies. Majin B Max says Astartes 2 is going to be coming out soon. There's an article on Warhammer community. Get the fuck out of here. I'm going to read that immediately. Christian Blair is a counterfire. Super late. Post more jokes about Jackson Hinkle being murdered. Yeah, dude, but that's how I'm going to get banned. And I've already lost a 20K follower Twitter account. So I don't really want to lose my 5K one. I think I'm being throttled because I've been at 5K forever. So I think if I did the verification thing, then I would probably be higher. But it's like, dude, you banned my 20K follower account that was doing great. And then you're asking me to pay another $8 a month. And it was over a Squidward meme. It was the over we're gonna kill you Squidward meme. It's like, all right, go fuck yourself, you know? So I mean, I might do it eventually. I might do the verification thing again. Yeah, Elon is against the centrist gang. He wants us all to be Trump sycophants. It's annoying. Lead Eater says, yeah, Space King 1 was great. Yeah, it was. Why don't more video games portray characters' development arcs anymore? DEI is finding games, but we never learn about their flaws, wish, and accomplishments. It's all that they are in and of itself. Well, I agree there. One of the things that's actually really interesting is the Disney Star Wars trilogy is terrible, in my opinion. And obviously everybody has that opinion. But the reason why I hate it so much is because there was so much there that they missed, right? So you could have had, sorry for yawning, I am very tired. It's been a hell of a couple of weeks. But you could have had like a really interesting development arc with Finn, right? Having Finn being a former stormtrooper who joins a rebel alliance, who wants to flee eventually, but then has to confront his former masters and then leads a stormtrooper revolt. That could have been sick. They could have made that awesome, and they made it terrible. Having Rey being this like orphan who comes from evil lineage, but she's trying to fulfill her potential as a force for good, despite the world constantly screwing her over. That could have been interesting. They did nothing with it. Poe Dameron being a hotshot pilot who's constantly being stomped on by rebel bureaucracy. That could have been interesting. They did nothing with it. It fucking sucks, dude. Like Disney Star Wars fucking sucks. It's very upsetting. OG Cicero says, "Oh, Connor, thoughts on the Witcher 4 trailer?" I thought it was based. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm not gonna lie again. I don't play video games with female protagonists. I'm not going to. I'm not going to pretend to be a girl. That's trans and or gay. Okay. I'm not going to play a video game that has a girl protagonist. I literally might skip Grand Theft Auto 6 if they force you to be a female protagonist. I am sexist and representation matters. Okay. I want to play a male. It can be a black male. It can be a Hispanic male. It can be a Tongan male. It can be a Filipino male. I don't care, but it's going to be a male, right? Like I'm not trans. I don't feel like watching romance scenes from a female's perspective. Like, get the fuck out of here, right? So, Tomb Raider, no, okay. So, Christian Blair says, Connor never played Tomb Raider, say it ain't so. One, I've never played new Tomb Raider. I played old Tomb Raider, and I only played it for a little bit. And the reason why you play Tomb Raider is to look at her butt, right? So, I think there's a different thing between a woman being the protagonist, and then you have to empathize with her, and then you have to go with her through her romance scenes and all that kind of stuff, and you have to be in her shoes, so to speak, versus the main character being a sex object. Now, obviously, this is horribly sexist, and you shouldn't listen to me for advice on these perspectives. I'm just telling you this is how I feel. I will, if Grand Theft Auto 6 forces you to be a female protagonist, I will not be buying Grand Theft Auto 6. If what is it? If Witcher 4 is exclusively a female protagonist, I won't be playing it. Now, I didn't play the other Witchers either, but that's because I tried it once and it was so complex. I was like, I don't give a shit enough about this. Now, story is cool. I thought Henry Cavill's Witcher TV series was very mid, but the action scenes were good. And the general idea is pretty cool. So let's say that you had, this is the lore as far as I understand it. They're in a medieval era. Some like warp portals open up all over the planet. They unleash a shitload of monsters onto the planet, but then they also infuse some humans with the ability to have monster-like powers. And so the people with monstrous powers are feared and shunned and hated, but they are also incredibly useful as monster hunters. And so Witchers are distrusted and hated and segregated from society, but they're hired as bounty hunters in order to hunt monsters. And so Geralt is a very handsome, rugged, mercenary, bounty hunter, witcher guy. And he falls in love with some witch lady who's also hot. And then they have like an adoptive daughter, which I think is Ciri. And then he raises her to become a witcher. That's what I understand from the broad strokes of the story, right? And so actually the humans come from somewhere else too. A lot of Jewish stereotypes rolled up into witchers. Ooh. Oh, and Bayonetta. Yeah, y'all are talking about titty characters, right? Anyways, Samus from Metroid, true. So, but I want Samus from Metroid and Commander Palmer from Spartan Ops and John from Master Chief, or John Master Chief, and I don't know, Locke or whatever. I wouldn't mind if there was like a 4-player co-op campaign where you could pick one of those 4 characters. That way the girls have representation and the boys have representation. I don't care. That's fine. That'd be cool. But I would pick John or Locke every single time. I would pick Locke because he has cooler armor. I would pick John because he's the better Spartan, right? And then if girls wanted to play Sarah Palmer, or if they wanted to play whoever the fuck else I mentioned, a Samus version Spartan, sick. Do it. Have fun. Be a girl. Enjoy violence. Just give me options to be a boy and enjoy violence too. That's all I ask. I'm a very simple creature. Yeah, Christian Valerius. At least Henry Cavill's Warhammer 40K series is a go from Amazon. True. And what was interesting about that is there was all these really cringe articles coming out saying, oh, it's canceled, it's canceled, it's canceled. Amazon forced Games Workshop in order to do female custodies, and as a result, Henry Cavill quit. But I watched like one of those, and they didn't have any sources. And then I watched like another one, like half of one and a half of another one to see if there was anything to them. None of them had sources. And I was like, this is all bullshit. This is all bullshit clickbait that they're trying to use in order to rage bait people in order to get money. And they're all reporting from each other. They're using each other as sources. Don't ever trust anybody like that. If they don't have like an insider source, if they don't have an article or a link or an insider or anything like that, you should take somebody with a source with a grain of salt. You should take somebody with no sources as total bullshit and speculation. And you never want to be a Witcher guy. South Park, true. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go to the Warhammer community website and check and see what they're saying about Astartes too, because that could be very cool. There is no representation in the New Jersey drone saga. Here's another thing too. So with the drones, I think I told you earlier how I got duped, but I'm also hopeful. There was this video in New Jersey of like an electric ball that was just spinning with like electricity all over the place. And it was captured by a local news crew. And so they were like, we don't know what the hell that is. It could be a natural phenomena, whatever. Somebody on Twitter is saying that you can actually see the light strobes and it's a jetliner. And that's a result of the lens trying to capture an object that's really far away and the light playing off of the lens. So they're saying it's not a UFO. Okay. Now, I did read about vacuum electrogravitic propulsion today, just off of this Googling things, okay? And what this is, I'm not saying this is real, and I'm not saying it's replicable, and I'm not saying that Skunkworks has it. I'm saying I hope they have it, okay? So what it is there was a gentleman in the 1950s who put an object in a tube, and then a vacuum tube, and then he electrified it. And what he found is that the object, somehow, he either measured it and it had less mass or more mass, and then it also moved in directions with the electrification and also with its mass, right? So this was hopefully a breakthrough for gravitic propulsion, where you could use electricity to create, they call it like ion air or something like that, electric air. And it's a version of thrust that doesn't have any components. It's literally a power source and then something that you can electrify. And MIT last year actually flew a plane. Now it was like a plane from the 1910s, but they flew a plane 60 feet with this ion propulsion. And so it's possible that Skunkworks has a program where they've taken a sphere, put a nuclear reactor in it, and then created ion wind in order to make an electrogravitic UAV. That's possible. And that could also explain the like the UFO sightings, that the Tic Tac UFOs. Electrogravitics could explain that. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. This is just the stuff that I read, right? And so it could be phenomena, but somebody also shared that the DOD or the DOT, I forget, but they have a signed agreement with the state of New Jersey to start using commercial drones in that area. And they don't want to admit to it publicly because they don't want to admit to the capacities that they're testing right now. So I have no idea. Yeah. So John Kennedy says, so an ion drive inside atmosphere? Maybe. So it could, and somebody on Twitter too, they said that it was Space Force. That Space Force was basically doing this in the public in order to tantalize interest, and that they were going to do an announcement at the end of the month, basically saying like, yeah, we got UFOs, right? We got flying saucers with ion anti-grav. I mean, that'd be sick. I would be like, sick. Please take another $1 trillion. You know, I'd be like, all right, that's based. Let's do it. So I'm not saying that it is any of these things. I am not going to make a prediction, or like I'm not going to say anything. It's not worth saying 100% it's this thing, because you could be proven to be a fucking moron the next day. So Jonah Boy says it's aliens. You know, Alex Jones says it's trans-dimensional demons. Who knows? So yeah. AD says, I saw the Kitty Hawk plane at the Smithsonian. Imagine living at that time and the rate of technological improvement. So this is out of Fort McGuire. AD, yeah, that's kind of what they were saying. Is that the DOD commercial drone program was signed, was authorized out of Fort McGuire. So I'm not, again, it's a Twitter post, right? Take it with a grain of salt. When I'm alone with my thoughts, I wonder how much. I'm going to rephrase that. So if my children watch this, they can laugh as well. Christian Blair says, when I'm alone with my thoughts, I wonder how many women the Wright brothers were able to get access to through the first successful flight. Well, hopefully a whole bunch, right? They did something cool. So anyways, we're going to wrap it up. But so what's cool is that I had no idea. Artificial gravity is always the thing in science fiction, right? There are so many TV shows that have the Expanse is the only show that I know of where they do not have artificial gravity figured out. And so as a result, they use thrust as gravity. That is the only show that I know that does that. And so if they can I didn't understand electrogravity or gravity at all. And I'm still like just reading the Wikipedia page and just regurgitating what I read, right? But the fact that it's even a possibility gives us like a thread of reality to pick at, where we might be able to create artificial gravity. And then that would help us colonize everywhere. That would help us colonize Mars. It would help us colonize with long voyage space stuff. It would help us do so much cool shit where you could basically have that, you could have like an artificial gravity generator in a colony on a moon, where the moon itself would give you 1/3 of the gravity that Earth does, but you could just put an artificial electrograv generator in there, and then boom, you got what you need in order to sustain human bone density and cardiovascular flow and all that kind of stuff. So that would be sick. Obviously, that's like, to me, that seems like generations or centuries away. But if Skunkworks revealed that, I would be ecstatic. I would be through the roof if they said, yeah, we figured out electrogravitics. We can now propel a machine against gravity in atmosphere with effectively like a fission nuclear reactor and some conductors, some electric conductors. That would be sick. AD says, imagine we will be alive when nuclear fusion goes online. Yes. Actually, yes. Global warming, no effect. They just need tech that survives the plasma facing part. So AD, I saw we still got 40 people hanging out. So thank you for hanging out. I'm just kind of chilling with chat for a minute. One thing that they did is there was an upper limit for fusion reactions where you could only reach a certain temperature that correlated with the mass of the chamber. This is something that came out within like the past 6 months. And they did something where they either like change the chemical composition or something like that, or they introduce like electricity. I forget what they said they did, but they introduced some kind of variable where they made the plasma that you cooked within the chamber like triple efficient. And so as a result, the current model has the fusion energy breaking even, but with this model, they've been able to increase output by 300%. And as a result, they have all this extra output. So the problem is right now is the fusion reaction, the fusion reactor that they're building right now is built with the old model. And so as a result, they're already 70% of the way done. They can't go back. They can't go back and redesign it. But the next one that they build, they should be able to take advantage of this breakthrough. And as a result, they should be able to get excess energy out of the fusion reaction. So yeah, I'm not saying we're there, probably another half decade, probably another decade, but we could be a half decade or decade away from fusion. And that's going to solve so many problems. I can't tell you the degree to which nuclear energy that has no risk of, like radiation leaks and all that bullshit. If it has no risks, if you break the machine and it literally cools off and doesn't do anything, that changes the game. It changes the game. Yeah. But how can we use this technology to kill people? Well, eventually we'll miniaturize it and we'll allow you to shoot a bolt of liquid hot plasma into your enemies. Yep. Elite Eater says thorium reactors getting another chance sooner than later, hopefully. Yep. I've heard several positive breakthroughs in the nuclear industry. Uh-oh, sounds like another 20 years until we're self-sufficient. Haha. Well, John Kennedy, here's the thing, is Elon Musk keeps bitching about population collapse, right? He keeps complaining, oh, people aren't having enough babies. Well, you know what modern babies do? I'm going to have 3 babies, so I'm part of the problem. But you know what babies do? They have a correlated carbon consumption for their entire thing. That's the whole degrowth movement. The whole degrowth movement is about not having more children than you need or having no children. That way we don't have a correlated negative environmental impact. We're already doing it. Just through condoms, porn, and video games. We're already doing it. So seriously, like population collapse, we're going to have to figure out the economics of it. But dude, could you imagine South Korea right now? South Korea in 2 generations, if their birth rates continue the way that they are going to experience a 30% decrease in population in 2 generations. And I'm pretty sure that's 30% the first time and then 30% again. So that basically means that you go from a giga dense elbow to elbow Asian downtown area. And by the way, the cities might still do well, but you go from this like claustrophobic cars everywhere, all this bullshit, to literally 2/3 of your daily commute traffic is gone. We can design better cities. We can have more efficient things. It's going to be so good. Honestly, I am looking forward to having 3 children and the planet being depopulated. It's going to be great. Oh. Yeah, AD says at the current rate we're going to max out at 10 billion and then in 2100 it falls. Dude. Think of all the dystopian sci-fi you've had where the planet was overpopulated. Like half of dystopian sci-fi comes from population issues. Christian Blair says those tech retards want to create their own closed off cities if society collapses. Oh, that's what we're going to do too. AD says population decrease means no money for the older population. Yeah, if we're not creative. But I think we can be creative. I think we can figure it out. That I don't take that bullshit from fucking capitalists who just want you to work until you're fucking dead, right? I don't take that bullshit of like, oh no, we need billions of slaves so I can make money. It's like, no, go fuck yourself. Like we can provide enough food, enough energy, enough housing, and enough opportunity for a society to function. Okay. Back when we had 12 motherfuckers living in a cave, eating rabbits and shit, we figured out how to survive. We can figure out how to survive with all of the modern technology and amenities that we have now. There's no fucking way that we just like, we lose a third of the working population and then we're just like, okay, old people go starve and die. Like, no, we'll figure it out. Half, not 2/3, Connor. Well, hey, is what it is. I don't really give that much of a shit. Ooh, he does the math for us too. 100 times 0.7 is 70, and then 70 times 0.7 is 49. Thank you for doing the math. That actually explains a lot. Christian Blair says they all believe in the tech libertarian philosophy of Hans Hermann Hoppe. Yeah, I don't care. Bud123, Connor's advocating for socialism. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Bud123, you have been here too long to say that, okay? Socialism is not when the government does stuff, okay? Socialism is the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. Decommodification of basic human needs means that you guarantee food and housing to people. I'm not even saying that. And then people own... Oh, it's a joke? Okay. All right. I hope that's a joke. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, old school. You say Connor wants a welfare state, not socialism. Kind of. But even then, in my heart of hearts, if I was a dictator, I would be doing that fucking biblical shit. You don't work, you don't eat. Right? So what I would straight up say, I'm on my soapbox. I'll hang out with you guys for like another 10 minutes or so. So here's my soapbox. If you are productive, healthy, and happy, and you don't spend 30 to 50 hours a week working, fuck you. You don't get shit, right? Yeah, you're not a part of the society. You're not a productive member of society, right? If you're disabled, meaning you're physically or emotionally or mentally, whatever, like you are physically, emotionally, or mentally incapable of productive behavior, then you will be evaluated by doctors, and then we'll figure out a way to take care of you. You can go to the I'm going to be mean. You can go to the retard hotel, okay? We'll have a hotel downtown. It'll be staffed by nurses. We'll take care of all the retards, okay? And then if you're old or if you're a child, then obviously we're going to want your family to take care of you. But if you need help, you need help not eating cat food, then obviously we're going to take care of you, right? We'll figure it out, right? But the point is, from the age of 18 to the age of like 55, you owe society 40 hours a week of productive behavior. Now, I don't care what that is. It could be walking the dogs at a dog shelter. It could be, working a gig, a corporate job. It could be designing new machines. It could be this. It could be that. It could be whatever it is. But you owe that 40 hours. And if you don't, it better be because you're like a rich motherfucker who created an institution that creates so much excess wealth and well-being for everybody else that you're being taxed millions of dollars a year. If you're being taxed millions of dollars a year, then that is you already created an institution that pays those taxes. Therefore, you are providing for hundreds, if not thousands, of non-productive people. Therefore, you can go to the horse track and wear your gay little hats and be rich and have multiple wives and all that bullshit, right? Bud123 says capitalism plus welfare state equals social democracy. Yeah, but that sounds gay, right? So don't call it that. Call it something else. Call it ordered liberty. Call it what does the Starship Troopers doesn't have a name for it. Managed democracy. That's what it is. It's managed democracy. Oh, it's Keynesian economics, dude. Libertarians say Keynesian like it's a fucking poison pill, and it's not. Money's made up. Money is a piece of paper. Money's wildly important. I'm not saying it's not important, but money is made up. It's a social construct. It is something that we have created. That way we don't have to kill each other in order to get access to material goods. And so people will be productive. You bend the tool to you. And this is actually a very important question. This is actually a difference in mindset. Do humans exist to serve an economy, or does an economy exist to serve humans? My answer is both. But what's your answer? Because a lot of libertarians, they seem to think that human beings solely exist to be productive cogs in an economic machine. And that is not, I believe in God. I don't believe in a personal God. But God did not put you on this earth to be a productive cog in a machine. Owning the means of production sounds based. Well, that's what you say, Connection Killer. That's socialism, by the way. Connor, how would we pass the time in that cave? Hunting and gathering, and doing cave paintings. AD says in Denmark, they have that at Bud123, but culturally, you must work. They value work. Living off of welfare is not a good thing. Yep, precisely. Bud123, that's it. I am leaving for the Trump communist freedom cities. True. How would you measure the productivity scale of the artists and intellectuals? We won't have any. Okay. Artists and the intellectuals, we'll put them in a work camp. They can sing songs while they mine for lithium. Old School says, does this come before or after political enfranchisement through federal service? After, obviously. Do we defeat the CCP before we explore the galaxy? Yes. Yes, Christian Valeris, we do. Now, I'm not saying we defeat them militarily, but obviously, like, if their ideology continues to exist, they're going to perpetuate it to other planets. We kind of have to defeat it first. Yeah. Do you see an eventual pendulum swinging to a more robust welfare in this country? I do. I think that, AD, what's going to happen is Doge is going to take a fire axe to federal administrations, and then people are going to realize why they exist in the first place. And then there's probably going to be a pendulum shift where we have new programs. Now they'll all be like efficiency minded because we'll be recovering from Doge. But yeah, I think there'll be a backlash to Doge if Doge does anything. If Doge does, if Doge actually accomplishes anything, then I think it's going to create a backlash. If it doesn't accomplish anything, I think that's just going to speak to the structure and the strength of our current state. A lot of kids are fomenting positive socialist leanings. Yeah, cringe. The economy is the market, and the market is individuals going through their lives fulfilling their needs and wants. I agree, ad libitum. I agree. 100%. 100%. I agree with you. And so the economy is the market, and the market is individuals going about their lives fulfilling their needs and their wants. I think that there's a whole bunch of really bad antisocial adaptations to the current American market that actually like slowly fracture and annihilate our social fabric. And the only reason why they're possible is basically because of immigration. If we were this antisocial and we didn't have immigration, we would fall apart next day. Old School says pendulum shift to a massive welfare state. Well, I didn't say massive. I just said a big, a decent one. That's it. I'm catching the next thing to Mars. Dude, when you go to Mars, Old School, just being real, when you go to Mars, you're not going to be able to have a gun on Mars. You shoot a fucking BB gun, you're going to decompress the whole fucking colony and kill everyone. They're not going to let you have a slingshot. You're not even going to be able to have a bow and arrow. You might be able to have a knife. You might be able to, like when the Second Amendment gets to Mars, it's going to be you can have a knife. That's what it's going to be. Because the threat of having ballistic weapons in the hands of fucking randos is way too risky. You could literally you could just be in your room fucking shooting guns and shit because your junky fucking neighbor tries to steal from you. You shoot your fucking junky neighbor, but then the bullet goes through the outside of the fucking colony and it decompresses an entire floor and kills 40 fucking people, right? They're not going to let you have a gun on Mars. Christian Blair says, I fear the incentivization justification of political violence against legit targets, healthcare CEOs by both far left and right in anti-establishment garbage. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. This is some of the antisocial behavior that I'm talking about. Now, that being said, I also think there's antisocial behavior from the CEOs in the first place because they basically run their machines like everybody, or they run their institutions like everybody below them is a cog and not a thinking, feeling human being. And then they also run their institutions to fuck their customers as much as possible. So I think if you run your subordinates like they're not human beings, but like they're little cogs in a machine that will perform perfectly every single time. And then if you treat your customers like sheep to be fleeced, then eventually somebody's going to smoke you. Just is what it is. So, and on that cheery note, I'm going to share this with you. I'm up to 140,000 views in 36 hours on my most recent Warhammer thing. So that is going to be a banging ass video. It is going to be so good. That one's going to be minimum 250,000 views, maximum probably 1 million and change. My highest video ever, I think, is breaking at 800,000 right now. So this one's probably going to smoke it. It's probably going to be at like 500,000 in a couple of months. It's going to be great. John Kennedy says, congrats, dude. Thanks, buddy. Christian Blair says, have a good night. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Parasocial Love. So we're down to 37 cross-platform, but we were peaking out at 50, and there was like 45 people just hanging out with me and listening to me yammer at chat. But Parasocial Love to you and yours. I do appreciate you hanging out with me. Thank you for hanging out for the one-on-one as well. I know that one-on-ones are always a little bit drier because it's not a debate where people are screaming at each other, but I do appreciate you hanging out for it. Thank you to the donors tonight. Thank you for the money. It is appreciated. We will pay the editor with it. Parasocial Love to you and yours. Happy holidays. I hope you guys are doing phenomenally, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.